Today we're going to be talking about the community's questions with Kill Team and if we can answer them. This is two TOs here from Squad Games and also avid players of the game. We've been playing the game for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And tonight our guests are Barricades, who is Mike. Mike comes from New York. And we also have Jonathan Marquis, who is a local. And Jonathan calls himself the Inconvenient Rules Lawyer. Fellas, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
So, a lot of you may know him on Discord, and you also probably know that Mike is an avid person in the Kill Team community. He goes on lots of Discords, has lots of conversations, but the thing he's most known for, at least in my eyes, is the community Warhammer FAQ. He compiles everyone's questions, and we send them all to Games Workshop when they ask for them. Mike, I just want to say thank you for doing that because it is a thankless job and no one wants to do it.
For real. You're welcome. I mean, listen, community effort, I definitely have gotten some new gray hairs because of it. But, it's all for the greater good, as a Pathfinder player would say.
Oh, my God.
There you go. Yeah, representing for the Pathfinder players out there. Just destroyed Dakota. Destroy him.
Yeah. That's okay.
Oh, man, it's incredible.
Now, Jonathan, you've been playing this game for how long down here as well?
I was there from the beginning all the way through.
Wow.
I cut my teeth. I actually split my first box with Emmanuel, the E-Man. So I was Vet Guard versus his amazing commandos. And the community has been amazing since then. And I've stuck with it ever since.
All right. That's good. That's
fair. Now, Jonathan, you're still in the hunt for a golden ticket this week at SoCal Open. Mike has already got one. I have got one as well. Giacomo didn't even try this year for one. Maybe next year.
Nope, I go for painting. That's me.
Yeah,
I don't even enter that.
Most of these questions are going to be coming from the most competitive of us here at Kill Team, are during Kill Team games, and in fact, a lot of these questions have been cultivated in the Golden Ticket Discord for the United States and around. So a lot of these questions are going to be what we think will be frequently asked questions for this edition, and we're going to try and give our best answers and what we think Games Workshop may answer, because there may be differences. We might say this is raw, but it's broken, so we shouldn't play it this way.
Right.
And maybe Games Workshop then comes around and is like, hey, you're wrong. Yeah, exactly. It's happened plenty of times.
All the time.
In fact, me and Mike used to have a running list of who would be more wrong. And it was usually me.
Okay.
Yeah,
He's in the know. Mike's in the know.
Yeah. In fact, Mike and me get in arguments, and he's like, "Oh, it happens like this." I'm like, "Shut up, Mike! You don't know what you're talking about," even though he does.
And it's Jonathan with the steel chair, Then he comes in out of nowhere.
Jonathan out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. So, are you guys ready to get the show kicked on the road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have these all in a Google Doc. And we'll be sitting here, we'll read the question out, we'll discuss them, we'll pull up the books or relevant armies, PDFs, stuff like that, and we'll try to get the best question. Now, there are 5 pages, so I'm expecting this to go at least 2 hours, right? If we get through it faster, then awesome. I think most of us have read through this, and I, myself, have answered almost this entire packet by myself, but I was doing it by myself. I didn't have G here. I wasn't talking to Mike, and Mike being like, "Well, Dakota, you're just stupid." Why would you even think that? So it's going to be great. It's going to be good times. So we're going to get the show on the road. The very first one we have is when a hatchway is open, which sections of the hatchway are considered to be the end, which provides cover and or obscurity? Do the squares on either side of a hatchway provide cover? And if so, is it only for cover lines that pass through the open hatchway? Personally, go ahead.
I would say this question is actually kind of near and dear to my heart because as I've seen people play it, there has not been consistency on what people define as an end as far as the hatchway is concerned. Some people do play it where the 2 square pillars on either side of the hatchway will provide cover. Some people don't. And it changes the dynamic of the game significantly. So if we can get this pinned down from the very start of 3rd edition, that would be great for the longevity of the game as a whole, which is going to be a common theme throughout this whole document.
I would agree. I would say that on we're going to be looking mostly at page 69, right? Which is a great number, by the way. So if we look at the relevant picture here, it does say while the hatchway is open, it must be fully open. It is an access point. As an access point, it has accessible, insignificant, and exposed terrain. For that, everyone, that means that accessible specifically means that it takes an extra inch to move through. So this is not like last edition. You do have to move. It takes an inch just to cross through. I hate that rule.
I dislike it.
I thoroughly dislike it.
I agree with you guys.
Yeah, it's awful.
You already have to pay something as it is. So
you already have to pay an APL to
Yeah.
open the door in the first place. Why do you need to pay an extra inch just to move into the room? Ridiculous. I guess there's a tripping hazard. Right?
I guess.
OSHA has found Kill Team. So it also says it is its hatch has the heavy and wall terrain, and the gap directly underneath is blocking terrain. So there's not a lot, and this is the reason why it's here, is that there's not a lot of information on whether or not the walls next to it or the pillars themselves. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
I was going to say, right before page 69 is 68, where at the bottom picture there, it does show as a hatchway is open, an end of the wall is intervening. If there's more than 1 inch from both operatives, therefore B is obscured. In that picture is where I'm leaning towards for my interpretation of this, where only that little section and not the square is the part that's intervening.
Agreed.
When you say the square, what you're referring to the hatchway access point square?
No, so when I'm so in the document, I think I said the square pillar or something along those lines, but it's basically in that picture on 68, the little square pillar to above the hatchway is what I'm referring to as not giving cover or obscurity.
See, they chose really colorblind friendly colors.
They really should have. They should have done exactly what they did over here and really highlighted that section.
Yeah, they definitely didn't. I didn't even notice that it was colored at all.
Picture is as the hatchway is open and into the wall is intervening.
The wall.
So that section does that. Now, specifically on page 66, a Galadark wall terrain is heavy and wall terrain. That's everything. Some walls include a hatchway, which means that the only thing that basically every part of that is considered the wall terrain.
I would agree.
We get the definitions of what it is. And then the hatchway portion itself is just that orange square that gets cut out. So the thin wall portion next to it, and then obviously the bigger pillar that used to connect everything would all be considered wall terrain.
Well, yes, it is all considered wall terrain, and as you mentioned, basically everything is wall terrain, but the only things that provide cover or obscurity are ends, right? So it's about defining on ends and corners. So it's about defining where the end is in that picture. Is the end including the pillar, or is it not? And I'm personally of the opinion that it is not.
I would agree. It is not.
Yeah, I think that they should clarify that side of the hatchway specifically provides cover and obscurement. And that's kind of where it was last edition, and I feel like it needs to remain the same, or it should remain the same.
So that the third picture, because I mean, it feels like to me like the third picture shows both the pillar, which is the connecting joining points, and it shows the small sliver of the wall, and then it shows the hatchway, and it shows the lines going through, and it does clarify that as intervening, and it says therefore is obscured.
That is true.
Yep.
So since heavy piece, I think since because of that wall terrain is heavy innately, it no matter what would provide it. So maybe it just has a poor definition of the ends of the pillars rather than just the walls.
Oh, so you're trying to figure out whether or not it would count for cover then, as opposed to obscuring?
I think no matter what, it counts as.
This is obscuring regardless. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but just so I make sure I understand the question, it's just whether or not it counts as cover for that operative.
Sure.
If they were close enough to cover it as cover.
Yeah, if you're within the inch.
Well, it still does count as heavy terrain, right?
Right, which is still heavy terrain.
Right.
So
just for clarification, in Galardark on 66, when it says for the purpose of cover and obscured, only the corners and ends of walls can intervene. unless the active operative has passed it. Now, that statement, if we apply it rules, like inconvenient ruler wise, the only time that it refers to it being able to do so is both for cover and both for obscure, which seems to be able to be applied to that final picture. So if it can apply for obscuring, it would be able to apply for cover. So, and that would consider it as an endpoint.
Yes. Now,
Yeah.
it does go back to what you were saying about defining these things. So if we look at that picture on 68 that we've been referring to, the bottom picture, the third picture, there are on 68. There are essentially, in my opinion, 3 parts to discuss there. There's the square pillar on the top. Then there's that thin wall that's part of the hatchway, and then the defined square of what GW put of that orange square of the open hatchway. And of those 3 parts, we're trying to decide what will provide both cover and obscurity. Obviously, the part in the GW provided square, the open hatchway, is nothing. It is exposed. Then, if we go directly above it, we have the thin wall, which is what we are seeing in that picture, providing both cover and potentially, providing obscurity and potentially cover if the Vespid was closer to it. Then we have the square pillar above it, the thickest part of the wall there. Is that correct? Is that square pillar considered an end? Obviously not in the corner, but is it considered an end and therefore providing cover and obscurity? And that's the question at hand here, because in second edition, some people would play it where that pillar provided both cover and obscurity.
I think I think that square is only an end if it's on the end of a wall cap, right?
I agree with that. Literally the picture above it.
Correct. Correct. The picture above it, right? So like if there's a door right there, then it would be an end cap, right? You would have to pass it. I mean, there's a lot of problems currently in the edition without there being, not seek, indirect.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Right?
Yeah.
If the side of the wall does count as cover, then it's essentially impossible to shoot a model that has a heavy silent weapon behind it. I think innately.
That's a different question. We're jumping ahead.
I know, but I'm just saying it makes it very difficult.
Yeah, I agree.
I think for the purposes of answering this question and moving on, I think that the sides of the walls do provide cover, but the end cap doesn't unless if it's the end of a wall.
Right. So in this example where they're connecting, it does not provide it.
Correct.
Because it's not the end. This one does because it's the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Would you guys agree or do you guys disagree?
I agree with that. Jonathan?
Yeah, I agree with that because as far as it goes, now that I see, like in the weird chance that you're able to draw visibility lines, but it would be interrupted by that pillar as opposed to just simply the end cap. Per the technicality of what they have written, that isn't part of the end zone. So I would say no, but it would still obviously block things as far as visibility goes, and it would still be able to apply stuff for. So that would be a no.
Also, Mike, didn't somebody else answer this questionnaire already really well?
They did. It was a good friend of mine, Travis Chang. And
huge TO on the East Coast, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see if I look up his answer, because he actually publicly published his answers to this, and he references page numbers and everything. He also references where he prefers the rules, or what he interprets the rules as written, and what he thinks the rules as intended are, and says where he prefers them in particular rulings. And I believe here he is saying the same thing we are.
That's good.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're pretty much all in agreement.
Good. So going on to the next question. G, do you want to read out question number 2?
Absolutely. If a model's physical profile is too large to fit under terrain that does not have the blocking keyword, such as vantage, can the model legally move underneath the terrain until it can legally be placed in allocation where it can fit? So if we look at the Patriarch model, the big one from Brood Brothers, can it fit under those vantages where it's just too large or too tall, or even a Warp Coven Exalted on a disc or something? Is it too big to fit? To my knowledge, it should be able to move through, but it has to legally end in a spot where the model can fit under, right? So if you can move through, get the inches through the door and come out, I think you're fine. but you cannot finish there because your model physically can't be in or under that vantage.
Yeah, for a long time last edition, the ruling was that you could not move through, right? If your model can't fit at all. And then it got clarified later in the edition, right? But I mean, if you go through that old ruling, no one can move through a hatchway, you know?
Right.
Except now I guess it's insignificant, so I guess they could. But I'm in agreement. I don't think that the blocking keyword stops any model from moving there, at least temporarily. I think that we look into the same thing with these pipes. Mike, is this one of the pictures as well with the bases underneath the pipe and stuff? It is, right?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, that actually is more about the next question. But
Okay,
yes,
that's
yes.
fair. That's
Perfect.
fair. So I think that one's a relatively easy answer for us. I think that you 100% can, as long as your model can legally be placed without disrupting the terrain.
Right.
So I agree with both of you, but there is a bit of a dispute that happens with this particular question, and it's one of the things I would like to point out and see how you guys interpret it.
Okay.
Now, I agree with everything G and Dakota has said. The question becomes, people are very much focusing on the 1 inch increments, which is something that we did a little differently last edition. Before, the wording was that we moved in 1 inch increments, something along those lines. Now, if we look at page 40 of
The main
the
rulebook.
core rulebook, we go under universal actions, and if we look at reposition, which is now the move, it says move the active operative up to its movement stat to a location it can be placed. This must be done in 1 or more straight line increments, and increments are always rounded up to the nearest inch. So I think that this clarifies the opposite stance of what we don't think happens, that before people thought you placed every inch along your pathway and you had to have a legal placement along every inch of that path. But here it does clearly say, in my opinion, that you're moving straight line increments of minimum 1 up to your movement stat, so 1 to 6. And as long as you can place it at the end of that straight line increment, you are good to go. And there's a little bit more of a supporting citation for this, where if we look under Vantage, which now I'm going to struggle to find the rule page for that, but it does say you can basically move around obstructions as long as part of your base is able to stay on the Vantage
Correct,
at
it
all
does.
points. So even there, if you're moving around something, you're not placing your model every inch along those increments.
In a technical,
Page 60.
legal manner. Page 60.
Ooh, here's a little bit of a side note that someone asked on Discord. In the case of a modded model, if you have the official model for that model, can you leave the official model in that space till it moves again later? So let's say I have a custom guy who's taller than normal, but the regular one could totally normally fit under a Vantage. Could I use the regular model temporarily, and then when I move, return my big model? Or was that now?
Yeah.
I think that's fine, right? Because they have the official.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that a lot of tournaments in Europe specifically says if any of your models are converted, you still have to have a legal model.
Oh.
And if you're using a converted model, then you would then replace that for all intents and purposes for shooting and visibility questions, and then you could replace that model back to where it was. And I believe that was made known to us LVO 2023 when there was some differences here in America where we thought a little bit differently.
Perf. Yeah, thank you for that side question. If you're on the Twitch, you can ask these side questions, and we'll do our best to catch them.
Okay, so going on to the next one. Jonathan, do you want to read out this one, buddy? Maybe we lost Jonathan.
All right.
Oh,
Nope,
there you go.
I'm here.
He's here.
He's the suspense.
The suspense. If a model is removed from the kill zone, do any of their abilities tied to markers continue to affect the kill zone?
I think that's question 4, but that's okay.
That's question 4?
Yes.
Oh. I thought I've got after can a models be placed under terrain that has the blocking rule? I'm sorry. Can a model be placed underneath terrain that has the blocking rule? If so, how do cover lines determine if the model ends their movement underneath terrain that provides cover? Example, ITD hatch.
Yeah. So I think the technical rule for us here is that blocking terrain visibility cannot be drawn through such gaps for the purposes of obscurity, gaps intervening. So technically, like, if you put a model's base underneath a pipe, technically you can't see the whole base because
It's blocked.
visibility is blocked, right?
Right.
So that's where this
Right.
question's coming from. I think in order to make it very easy for people is don't put your model's bases underneath blocking terrain, even if it technically says raw. You can.
Right, and it would fit.
I think that gets around a lot of rules, lawyering, and other things, and I think it just makes it pretty simple. While I think that you can place a model's base there, that would be my thing. What do you guys think?
So something actually just clicked for me literally as we were talking about this that I hadn't thought of from this angle before. Just so you know, not everyone agrees with that interpretation. I mostly do, that you just can't put your base under anything with blocking. Travis, going back to his answers, actually does think you can place your base under things that have blocking, such as into the dark hatches or pipes. And the struggle then becomes, what is the cover line for that operative? Because now
I think you
potentially
can. I just don't want to.
I just
answer
don't
it.
recommend that you do it.
It's ridiculous.
Plus, if you have to clear it, if you're stuck somewhere, and let's say you're not climbing, you choose to clear, you have to move back more. So if anything, it costs you more to do. I would just
agree
say,
with that.
don't even worry about that. You know, don't make it hard on yourself.
what's interesting is the new way intervening is written on page 51.
Okay.
Okay.
So it says you need to have a 1 millimeter line drawn to the part of the base facing you. So it's not now every part of the base, only the part of the bases that are facing you. So I wonder if blocking cuts off part of the base that you wouldn't see, you don't have to draw cover lines to that. You follow what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I follow you. Yeah, I think that would be fine. Because you're only looking for visibility at that point. You're not checking for lines of cover and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're underneath a heavy wall, technically it's intervening heavy.
So, I mean,
It is
the main part of visible is you're ignoring the base when you're looking at visibility. You're looking at just whether or not you
The
can see
models.
any parts of the operative.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you are able to sort of stunt up and try to take as much advantage of the terrain as you can, you might run into the other issue where you are now poking through
The other side.
blocking terrain, and then someone else can essentially touch your base to their base, but somehow not be visible, which would be very funny if you're,
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
and then not visible to each other.
that would be silly.
it's gonna be some interesting hatchway door fights, but not using.
I mean, a hatchway
not
door
using the
fight, yeah,
hatchway
but
fight.
That creates a whole nother rules question in itself, right? And then most people on YouTube are going to be watching this and thinking we're dumb. Like,
Hey, if they want to write in the comment section what their interpretation of the rule is, please do so. I'm ready to respond.
My sense is the best way to sort of do this is sort of one of those gentlemen agreements or ladies agreements, anybody's agreements, and or
I like this from
TOs
Marty.
stating.
Marty said, I like this. Seems like blocking terrain should just block your bases from being there. It's not. It's a good line,
Would be nice, but you can fit it under there.
I mean, you could.
But you shouldn't.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm aware. I'm not going to. I don't want to damage my models either. If you get stuck under something, you might scrape it.
Easily could get stuck, scratch the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
I would say that for a tournament, it would just be like, yes, you can go under there, or no, you can't. The same thing if you're playing like kitchen table, you would just make that decision between the two of you.
It also stops people. It also stops people from like jamming their model when they open the door from an into the dark, and then their like base is kind of out the thing and all that kind of stuff. It stops all that shenanigans from happening. So I'm still in favor of you can't put your bases underneath blocking terrain. Whether or not GW agrees or the rules as written agrees, that is my official stance.
I recommend you don't.
Yeah, I mean, I have the squad games answers for this. I just typed in that you can't do it you can't put your base under blocking terrain.
That is fair.
Easy
cool,
enough.
Cool. So now we're gonna move on to Mike. You wanna read this one out, my guy?
Sure. And before I do, I did break this. Next question is very related. So before we answer, we may want to check out that one as well.
Sure.
Okay.
So if a model is removed from the kill zone, do any of their abilities tied to markers continue to affect the kill zone? And the reason why that's slightly different, the other one is, I'll read that too if you don't mind. If a model is removed from the kill zone, do any of their passive abilities continue to affect the kill zone? And there, the example being Sky Splinter Omen, Cabalite Archbright Cunning, and Legionary Icon Bearer Favorite of the Dark Gods, their +1 CP thing. So I think that those two have a very important distinction of if there's a token to track or not.
Okay, well, let's pull up Neutron Fallout Zone. So let's go to Vespids.
Vespid.
I love how these are not in alphabetical order. I'm going to say it literally every time
Every
I
time.
open this page.
There it is. Vispid Stinglings.
It's up here?
There, yep,
Thank
there
you,
it
G.
is.
So we're going to pull up.
Gotta love it.
Does Control F work?
Yes.
Control F.
Yeah, to
As long
find
as you have the PDF up.
your topic.
It's page 10 of that document.
Page 10 of the document.
Vespid Skyblast.
Thank you very much, good sir. And page 10.
There you are, the Sky Blast.
So it says Neutron Bombardment. Place one of your Fallout markers within the primary target's control range. And then the Fallout marker itself does, once during each enemy activation, as soon as it's within 2 inches of your Neutron Fallout markers, inflict D3 damage on it. Multiple targets are not cumulative. So in this one, there's no clause of ever removing it. So can you just place 4 of them down in a round every time he shoots, or what?
Sure.
Well, you place it's once during each enemy operation as soon as it's within 2.
Yeah, whenever you're shooting. So you could essentially get 4 of these.
It's the primary target, not anybody else. So the first clause of Neutron Bombardment is place one of your Neutron Fallout markers within the primary target's control range. So you're only ever going to have one. Now, if for whatever reason they brought Fusillade back, that would work. But since that
makes sense to me.
We buried that 6 feet under the ground and no one knows where it's buried, and Blast has only one primary, you're only going to get 1 token, but you can have multiple tokens per round. The question is, when he dies...
I don't think it gets removed. Go ahead.
So, just to go back, Fusillade was a good comparison, but this weapon does actually have Blast. So you would potentially be hitting multiple targets and maybe putting one under each because it is... Oh, no, it does say primary. It does say
primary target. That's why I said,
yeah.
Fusillade, I mean, the closest thing would be Torrent, I think, technically. But I think even Torrents and Torrent Rating Network has a single primary target, and then you're within 2 of it. So this guy's only got the 1. But yeah, so since there's no clause, and there are no other extraneous rules in the rule books that anyone's found so far, this is the Fallout rule for that token, and that token stays in play. It doesn't say remove this token.
I would agree. It never says to remove it, so why would you ever remove it? In my opinion, as well on this, I mean, we've seen them make multiple data sheet inaccuracies throughout all of these, and we'll probably touch on most of them.
I mean, the Neutron Fallout is pretty easy to me in this example. Like, that's supposed to stay. It's Fallout of a, So
yeah. I mean, I agree, but the thing is that that doesn't seem like any of your markers ever go away. I know it just says place 1 of your Neutron Fallout markers, but it doesn't say you can only ever have 1.
Right. It would explicitly have to say. I think a good one you may want to look at is the Demolition Man from Vetguard, or maybe one of the Phobos ones, because I think they throw a marker.
The Death Core Sapper. And his reads, at the end of the action, you remove the mine from the kill zone. Let's see here. Detonate. Go ahead.
There is actually another really good example. Basically, anyone with the mine, like, for example, the Kasserkin Demo Mine Layer and the Phobos one that I think you're referring to, G. In both of those instances, it actually specifically says if this operative dies, you can place the mine that's on their person on the kill zone. Because unlike the Vetguard one that he has to sit there and detonate, any of them that are done with a proximity, like the Kasserkin one, you have to place it there after he dies, outside of engagement range or control range of any enemies, and then when they move into it, that mine will blow up. So I think that gives a really good precedence to say that, hey, if it's tied to a marker, it continues to affect the kill zone.
I would agree.
Absolutely.
Until there's an FAQ that comes out and says, like, hey, you can only ever have 1 Neutron Bombardment ever, right? This doesn't even say you can't only just have 1 in the kill zone.
This is designed to be used everywhere.
And then when he dies, they stay.
Yep.
And it's, I think until something comes out saying that you can only have X amount or it's removed here or there, there's no reason for us as community members to ever try and change a rule. Or I mean, I'm saying that now, but I'm going to become a hypocrite when we get to Inquisition.
Yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, I think that unless if something specifically says that it gets removed from the kill zone, it stays.
Right, and that makes the most sense.
I'd agree with that. And then if we go to the slightly different example, the next
I'd like
one.
to give one more example to that. So
Okay.
for in regards to numbers, so for Death Corpse Sapper, because I have the one already up, it says it is carrying your mind marker. And per the rules of carrying, you can only ever carry one item. And that's the difference between that one and the one for Vespid. Is the Vespid is just it's not carrying any of the tokens, so it doesn't have a set supply of them. It's from whatever your resource pool is, and since that's undefined, you can have as many of those as you go. But since the Sapper is specifically carrying the marker, there can only ever be one of it, because an operative, unless the operative says otherwise, and I think there's an operative or two that can carry more than one token, they're only allowed to carry one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense to me.
So let's move on to the next one. Otherwise, we'll never get through all of these. If a model is... Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the continuation.
This is the passive one, where in the 3 examples given, there's a slight difference here as well, and a meaningful one. Like, for example, the Cablet Sky Splinter Assassin has the ability Omen, and that's one where you can either select a friendly Hand of the Archon operative or an enemy, and if you select a friendly, they re-roll 1s. If you select an enemy, they re-roll 6s. Then you have the Cablet Cunning, which is just if you pass during your strategic gambit, you get 1 CP, which is tied to the leader. And then Legionary Icon Bearer, the favorite Dark Gods, where it is if he's there, you continue to gain 1 CP. So of those 3, 2 are the same. Mm-hmm. The Hand of the Archon leader and the Icon Bearer are both tied passively to that model. So I think that once that model leaves, that rule no longer affects the kill zone anymore, because the rule it was tied to is gone. On the flip side, with Omen, you're selecting a different model, and that rule will continue to affect the kill zone if the Sky Splinter leaves until the Omen, the model chosen by Omen, is gone.
I 100%
I would 100% agree. Yep. Simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I'll read the next one. When do models suffer the additional distance penalty for razor wire? If a model moves within 1 inch of any part of the terrain feature, or specifically when it crosses it. Now I'm going to give you 2 answers. No one's going to like either one, because barbed wire, none of us like. Okay? None of us like. I think I have...
In its current rendition.
Yeah. In fact, we dislike it so much that we've banned it, because it is absolutely busted. I'll tell everyone why it's busted now. So I don't get DMs later about, why do you think it's busted? Currently, it has a terrain feature, so that means it has to be climbed. When you get within 1 inch of it or you cross it, it costs an extra 2. And since you cannot combine a dash and a move currently to climb, and you have to place your base for free, and you have to clear your base, even a 28 millimeter model, which is a dwarf with a 5 inch move, rules as written, cannot cross a razor barbed wire. It cannot. Right?
It is a wall.
It is straight a wall for all dwarves and probably ratlings whenever those come out, right?
Yep.
You can shoot through that wall. The wall is made out of fine vellum mesh. But
Yeah. So currently it's really, really bad. I think currently rules as written for this question, anything within an inch counts as an extra inch moving around this particular terrain feature. I think it has an aura.
I don't. I think it's the specific clause of the term is crossing. So you can get right up to it, but if you're not attempting to cross, like you can run parallel with that thing.
Yeah, but what does crossing mean, Jonathan? Because crossing doesn't necessarily mean that we're crossing the terrain feature. Crossing could be going vertically alongside it.
No, because like you're not crossing the street when you're walking on the same side of the road. You cross the street once you go from one side of the street to the other side of the street. And generally, when you have an oblong object, the
so does it have a 1 inch aura coming from the sides of it because you're still crossing that terrain feature within an inch?
I think the technicality is that 1 inch is if you're somehow just a little itty bit above it, the barbed wire snags you. So that way you can't simply just put a ladder to try to go over it. If you're trying to cross within 1 inch, you get it. Because you're not crossing if you walk up to it.
So
You're not
specific.
really crossing if you walk alongside it.
Yeah, Mike, what do you think?
Two things. I don't think you can ever put a ladder next to it because I think ladders say you have to be outside of other
And
terrain
within
features.
2. And 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing has to be higher than 2.
And I think that we're going to have 3 different interpretations of this because I don't think it's an aura, and I do agree you have to cross it, but it does say cross within 1 inch. So personally, I think that it has a 1 inch extender to either end of the razor wire. So razor wire we know now is physically 3 inches long. I think that it's a 5 inch zone where if you cross that from one side to the other, then you get the 2 inch penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I agree more with Mike's interpretation after the whole crossing the road scenario has been put to me, and I agree with Jonathan. But I think in the future, when this gets FAQ'd to be fixed, I personally think they're going to give it insignificant and only when you're crossing the actual terrain feature itself.
Right, not within an inch of it.
Correct. I think that's what's going to happen.
If we can have a little side tangent on that one real quick.
Okay.
If this happens, if what you just proposed does end up happening where it is insignificant and it's only a 2 inch tax to cross it, dwarves and people with 5 inch movement will still be as screwed as they are now. Like just by math, that will happen. Like, so for example, we know a dwarf is on a 28 millimeter base. We know that is a certain amount of millimeters. I believe off the top of my head it was like 127. If you just put the now insignificant barbed wire within 27 inches of a hatchway, then
27 millimeters.
27 millimeters from a hatchway, then by math, the dwarf does not have enough movement to go from one side of the hatchway to be able to place his base to the other side of the hatchway.
Correct.
Which is why you can...
I think you'd have to stop it from being next to a door. Because
Yes.
realistically, you can still get a choke point of like, this is the middle of the lane, and like, all right, it's going to cost you an extra inch to move through this.
Why Games Workshop didn't just port over the rule from last edition that you can't place terrain features within 2 inches of an access point
is beyond me. You know what?
If
maybe
this was 2 inches or 3 inches, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
I think honestly, to make it really easy, is instead of having to describe it as climbing and unclimbing, because I mean visually that's the most. Narratively, that's the most appealing thing because that's what this person's trying to do. For whatever reason, instead of cutting it like anybody in the field would do, they're literally climbing up the barbed wire and climbing down and just getting ripped up. If you just gave it like access 4, so much ambiguity would go down because you'd be like, okay, this thing is access, but it costs 4 inches. Then there wouldn't be any amount of extra like, well, how does it work with this or that?
Yeah, or access 2 or something like that.
Or access 2 or 3. I mean, the idea is it's supposed to slow an area. So your opponent doesn't go through that area, or even if it had, so if
sure
that's
would
the
be
idea,
nice.
Also, sure would be nice. Just to make it easy.
Jonathan, maybe you should have wrote these rules. I don't know. That would have been nice.
Like, you can go over it with either a move or a dash, but you have to end that movement on the other side, and then you're like, okay, well then I know. Anyone can get over it, but they're just stuck.
I think my answer for this was like, I don't care. I banned it. I think is what I wrote.
Do you want me to put that?
No, I think the answer is when you cross the piece of terrain within the aura bubble. I think that is the answer.
Right, within
a 5 inch line, it costs 2 inches to move through.
Okay.
And hopefully we can all hope that Games Workshop FAQs this piece of terrain very soon. Otherwise, this is like as bad as like Pathfinders way back in the day. You can just put it in front of a door and you can just make Marines not walk through access points.
Just lock them down.
Like you can put it like 25 millimeters on the other side of an access point, and then a literal Space Marine cannot get through a Volcus door.
Right, a certain Volcus
Or
maps
into the
have the objective in there, so like, okay, I could stay on the vantage and you come in and climb and I just shoot you when you're in the open.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's awful.
Or it could have like the your opponent could pay 2 AP or 1 AP to cut the barbed wire.
That's what I was thinking.
That could be cool.
That's what I was thinking. So you choose to do it.
It would be
very narrative for like a combat scenario where you're sneaking into stuff.
I agree. Now here's the other thing, right? This is the second worst rule in the entire game right now. You know what the first worst rule is? Striking scorpions that don't have a 3-up save. Okay? That's the worst rule in the entire game.
100%.
One day it'll happen.
One day.
Quote unquote heavy armor.
Yeah, heavy armor. Heavy armor. All right,
Heavy-
moving on to the next one. G, you want to read this bad boy?
Yeah. We're doing the run right here. To move over barbed wire,
This is the same thing. Didn't we just answer this?
No.
Okay.
Slightly different.
Okay,
Slightly different.
Go for it,
Slightly
G.
different. To move over barbed wire, do you have to spend 2 inches to climb as well as an additional 2 inches for crossing over the terrain piece? If so, does this mean that a 40 millimeter or larger base cannot do so with a 6-inch reposition
Yes.
due to the size of their base and thickness of
Yes,
the
and
terrain
let's
feature?
move on.
Yes.
The caveat is to also say, and 2 inches to drop for free, because you do have to drop when you climb.
That is
Yes.
true. That is true.
Sure.
Yeah.
Technically.
Technically.
Yes. So yes.
Doesn't have enough movement.
Easy one.
Yeah.
Yes, and boo.
Yeah.
If you remember, Dakota, you and I argued about that one for a while because you were not always on board of climbing that thing. So
No, I
this
wasn't.
Is highly debated.
When I played this at Nova during the demo, the way it was taught to us while playing the game was that it only costed 2 inches to move through. We didn't have to climb it. We didn't have to move it through it.
Wow.
Now, whether or not I was being taught the rules correctly or we just sped through the things, I took away something completely different in my demo game, learning the game before anyone else, right? So, I can then infer that possibly in the future an FAQ might be how I was taught, or maybe we just played it wrong because we sped through and read the rules incorrectly.
It could be.
Could be. We'll have to see. The next one, Mike, you want to take this bad boy?
Sure. When climbing ladders, if the building the equipment is attached to is marginally taller than the ladder, how do you treat the additional distance?
So I think when we look through the ladders itself,
It should explain itself
it does.
right there.
In my opinion, it does. But there is a caveat in the rule which makes it more difficult to get through.
I'm expecting different interpretations on this. This seems like one of the ones that might be very clear. I'm expecting at least 2 different interpretations from everyone here.
Okay, well, on the picture below it, we can see that the terrain is marginally taller, and it still indicates that it just costs 1 inch. I think that it only costs 1 inch to climb to any Vantage 1, right? If you're trying to go to Vantage 2, rules is written, you can do it.
Yeah. You shouldn't
Rules
be
is
able
written,
to,
you can
but
do
you
it.
can, yeah.
In my opinion. But whether or not that's intentional, can you just climb up to Vantage number? I don't have the piece of terrain in here.
Right, the Vulcus piece with 2 vantages.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
So this is the interesting thing, because it literally states in there, including another ladder, which currently I don't know how you do, because you're supposed to set up
Within 2 inches, outside of 2 inches,
outside of 2 inches. So
or
I
1
guess
inches from a door.
1 inches from a door. Yeah, I guess that one. It doesn't say you have to put it on the ground of the battlefield.
No, you do not. You do not. It
Yeah,
does
you
not
could
have to
be
be
on
placed
the
on the kill
vantage
zone
if it
floor.
wants.
But you still climb it. So you're treating the vertical distance of that terrain feature, which is the ladder, as exactly 1 inch to any level of it. So you climb, and then after that, you continue to climbing another feature during that action. That distance is treated as normal. So the next distance, if you climb 1 inch above it, if you have to climb up 1 inch above it because it's a 5-inch increment.
I don't think that's right.
It would be 1 inch up and then another inch to go up. The question is, to me, is whether or not that extra inch is determined as per normal climbing rules, where you have to the minimum climbing amount is then 2 inches.
So here's my thing. I doubt that the people who designed the model actually thought that this was going to be a question. I think that they're putting this on a Chalmeth piece and being like, "Hey, this ladder's 3 inches tall. It's going to take an extra 3 inches to get to the top, my guy. Sorry." I think that's just not the case.
It's its own situation.
I think that if you place it on a piece of terrain, you climb it for 1 inch. We'll keep it simple.
So
right.
Let me ask you a question then, Dakota. With that interpretation, right here it says ladders are exposed terrain. They are a terrain piece themselves.
Yeah.
Correct.
If you start climbing one terrain piece, does that have any bearing on, once you get over that, on how you're going to climb the second one? Like, for example, if I'm climbing a barricade and I get over that barricade, if I start climbing a wall, does the distance that I climbed on that barricade have any bearing on that wall?
What?
Like if there was, let's say, the barricade, and then you climb, there's a ladder there, would then the ladder no longer take effect since you've already climbed over a terrain feature?
Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. Well, my point being, this here says if you climb up a ladder, only that terrain feature, it costs 1 inch to do that. It doesn't say anything about anything else except that if you climb any other piece of terrain, climbing is treated as normal. So
Correct.
in the picture right below it, you see that the ladder stops short of that terrain feature. So we'd presumably climb 1 inch for the ladder. Then we're going to move off of the ladder terrain feature onto a different terrain feature that we are told has to follow the normal rules of climb. Yes. So that rampart that we have to deal with before the vantage is going to get rounded up to 2 inches because per the rules, everything is a minimum of 2 inches.
I think that's just, I disagree with that take.
I
think that it only costs 1 to move up the piece because I refuse to believe that Games Workshop made a singular piece of 3-inch piece of terrain that they don't have control over the Vulcus, the extra Vulcus bastion. You know?
How long or how tall are those ladders?
They're 3 inches tall, I believe. They might be 3.5.
I have one right next to me.
Oh, perfect.
Because my interpretation is that it turns that whole climb into 1 inch.
It turns the climb into 1 inch.
At most, you might need 2 inches to go over.
What I think they're saying is if you move across, like, a vantage to get to your next climbing point to jump up somewhere else, right?
Then it's climbing as normal.
Then you'll be climbing something else.
The interpretation I have is sort of the real world, nitty gritty, physical, tiny whiny plastic of it all. If I'm carrying a ladder into the battlefield, it's only going to be so tall. And after that point of the ladder, I would then have to scale the building itself. So that ladder will get me whatever that is, inch to inch, whatever. So that's a 12-foot ladder, basically, in miniature world, I'm assuming. And then that extra 4 feet of climbing I have to do. But because I only know how to climb ladders, that extra 4 feet becomes 8 for some stupid reason.
I think that saving 3 inches on a climb is redundant.
Well, that's a pretty big climb because some other areas aren't, like you can use a ladder inside to directly onto the vantage.
Correct.
And then you just run up the vantage inside the building.
But you're only saving 3 inches of movement. So why would you ever take this piece of terrain? Unless you
that's not
had to get there.
3 inches of movement can also get your character to the other side when you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Like if it's
To answer that question, okay, two things. Ladder is about 3.75 inches, FYI. It's a little bit more than a half. It's just under 4. To answer your question that you just asked now, Dakota, why would you ever take it if it is still going to be 3 inches? Most teams, which is actually another question coming up, most teams cannot climb the rampart side of Vulcus with their movement without the ladder. Like, for example...
Isn't that ridiculous? Maybe we should just bring back dashing while climbing. Maybe if you combine both, because that gets rid of the heavy dash things that they're worried about, maybe you can still climb and dash and we can just forget this whole conversation.
There is speculation.
You think
somebody on Twitch said 3 inches is huge for some people. I agree. All right.
I mean,
that's fair. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
everyone,
3 inches and 3 plus save.
True.
Yeah.
Madam. Very true.
Yeah.
Again, it should just be this costs 1 inch to move up whatever wall it's against, and rules as written means you could technically climb up to the second thing. It's 1 inch.
I would say that if they do that, then they would probably just replace it with tokens. Because then you would have a token on the bottom and a token wherever you want to go on the top, and in between those two tokens, you could just climb up. But I think they really wanted to sell the ladder.
Sense?
Yeah, honestly, a token would be cooler.
Tiny,
or be fine.
That's like the decompressed one.
The one they give you? No one's using that.
It's really cute because it looks like it's actually like an air compressed ladder.
Yeah.
That you would run up and go.
Okay, Jonathan. All right. Okay, I get it, guys. I get it.
The
okay?
token makes more sense if you want to not worry about the length.
So are you on their side now, Giacomo?
No, hold on. I prefer the ladder. The ladder looks cooler.
Okay.
The ladder looks cooler, but it still functions as, this is an 18-inch thing. Well, the ladder says it costs 1 inch to go up. That's it.
See, I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't like it.
That's crazy.
We're exaggerating here, because if you look at Chalneth ones, which probably most people aren't going to use, that's
Fucking-
the only way you could
We're
get
just
up there.
gonna ban ladders too.
That's
Just
the
screw
only
it, okay?
way you could
We're
get
gonna ban
up.
everything. Just ban all of the universal equipment because they're all written.
I love
awful.
the ladders. I love the ladders.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, but it should
So
just
you
be.
think that it goes up completely? These two rules lawyers think that you have to still climb above. I think I'm going to say for this thing until we get an FAQ, you can climb to the first vantage without expending anything else. Whether you play on Chalneth, whether you play on Volcus, whether you just treat everything as the same climb, and then if you have to go to a second one, you'd have to spend additional climb.
You still got to clear it,
Pushing
though.
up my glasses just to make sure. That's also if it's on the other side of the rampart. You mean that too, right?
Yes, and the rampart. The rampart is, I know, considered another piece of terrain, but just you can get to the first.
To write that in Infernal, so I'm making sure I have the way you want it.
We're going to absolutely get the thing where they go like it's scalable again.
Yeah,
when they did that last time.
We're definitely going to get this.
We're going to get that. They're going to fix that again.
Games Workshop's going to come out with something sideways and just be like, "Oh, ladders."
You climb sideways now.
It's the escalator terrains that you go here and you just escalator.
Finally,
like at an airport over to somewhere else.
Yeah,
I would just like to point out that we started this conversation with, "Oh, ladders were going to be simple." It says it right there what they do, and then we had like a 20-minute long conversation.
But that's on you guys.
I'm trying to make this go faster, guys.
I like that. Like the lawyers are like, "It is this way," and but we want it to be fun. Rewrite it. Fine, sir.
So this one says, with a single reposition action, can an operative climb up on a ladder on one side and then climb down the same ladder on the other side? Well, I'm pretty sure that you're only allowed to do one climb action within a singular action.
Reposition action.
Reposition action. It's a singular action, reposition action. You can't climb, but I do agree that you can climb downwards.
Yes, that's kind of what this is going for. Yes, you can only use a ladder during one reposition, but this question is supposed to have you envision the L runes of this Volcus and Chalneth, where they're very high. If you put a ladder at one of those L's, can you climb up one side and down the other with a single reposition to make that entire climb 1 inch to go over it?
I don't think so, because it says you can only use the ladder once per action.
Once per, right, but if it's a single reposition, why not?
You mean the same ladder? Because you can use two different ladders.
Well, the same ladder. So going up one side, and then if you maintain 1 inch distance from it and visibility to it, can you go down that same ladder on the other side?
I see what you mean.
Okay, like you have it against a wall, and then you're arguing that somehow you're rappelling down the other side because you're not on the
You
feature.
go up and over like a side of the wall type thing. So here's the side of the wall. You got a ladder right here. Instead of going around it, you're going to go up, and then you're going to go down the other side. So it only costs 1 inch of movement. So you're acting like a breacher from the old edition. I understand the question.
Exactly. I love how frustrating these questions can be.
So now we have to start.
Is anyone else as frustrated watching this as I am?
We have to start adding visibility to ladders. Like if you can't see the ladder from the other side, therefore you can't climb it because you just have to be within an inch, and technically you're going to be within an inch.
All right,
so
I'll go get the
here's
terrain
the caveat
so people can understand
this is
what's
what it
going on here. All right.
You could still.
It's supposed to be visible to them.
I'm
to climb.
literally gonna die. Okay, here we go.
So if you're on the other side of the
it's
wall,
a good
you
question.
are now no longer visible to that ladder.
Right? Should you be able? You shouldn't be able to climb down once you're no longer visible.
Okay, everyone.
So
there's ladders in there.
I got a ladder in my hand.
Oh, even better.
Magic.
There you go.
So there's a building right here. You place a ladder right here, and instead of
they can see it.
Okay, hopefully they can. And you have a model. Let's get a model. Why not? We're going the 9 yards. Let's get our
the whole thing.
beautiful 4+ save, striking scorpions.
Hell yeah.
Can they climb up here, and then drop for 1 inch?
Let's make a big screen so everyone can see that.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, let's make this big screen for y'all.
Okay. Let's put it in focus.
As close as we
People
can. There
see.
we go.
Okay. So we got this L shape here, right? We got this guy going right. We got a ladder going right here. I want to cut this corner so I don't have to do that kind of stuff. I'm within 1 inch, right? I'm going to then climb up and then drop down on this side for 1 inch, thus saving myself.
Sir, you mean climbed? Drop is its own rule set. Climbing down the ladder on the other
Climbing, you're going to climb up and you're going to climb down, because climb is classified as a vertical action, not a vertical upward action.
Yep.
While drop is considered only a downwards descending action.
And downward and away from.
Look at you hear Mike just cracking up.
It's so unfortunate, because I used to be totally like, you can only drop to go down, but then it
Now-
doesn't explicitly say it.
What do you think now, G?
It doesn't explicitly say you can climb down, or you only have to drop to go down. So in theory, you could climb down.
We found the new Spider-Man, everyone.
You could be here and climb down for 1 inch,
That
and
is
that's
true.
totally legit,
Correct.
because it doesn't say you can't.
Yeah. What is Twitch chat saying? Why not
This
just walk
question-
the inch? Because David, it may take 3 inches to get around this corner.
It's a
and
principle.
this only costs 1 inch.
This is literally 1 inch from, I'm within 1 inch or a piece of here. I'm now here. That was 1 inch.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
1 inch.
just to
Instead of going
disappear.
1,
1, 2,
2, 3
3
inches. And with the bigger bases, it's even more important. With a 40 millimeter base, or heaven forbid, the Patriarch with a 50 millimeter base who has to pass this whole thing. Imagine this guy climbing up, moving over. He gets like 4 or 5 extra inches.
So in my inconvenient looking at this, you can, as long as you don't stop that climb, you can use that to go all the way up and all the way on the other side. But if for whatever reason you have to climb the ladder and then move a small portion on a vertical piece of terrain and then have to climb again, you cannot use the same ladder, because using the same ladder is it says once per action. But as long as you don't leave it, you can do that. Yep.
Jonathan's interpretation is my interpretation as well.
Okay, put it in there, because I don't want to think about it
I can
longer.
totally agree with that, because they do specifically say, the ladder thing.
Okay.
So yeah. So I guess if you did this and then put a ladder here within 1 inch away, but
Nope,
just
can't be within 2 inches.
So
within 2 inches. All right, you're good.
So
And we're safe. We're safe.
For the love of Pete, whatever you do, do not stop on the top of a ladder to just normally move, because then OSHA will come by and they will stop the entire war zone.
You're right.
They will not allow you to climb down that ladder. But if you use the top of the ladder as a step, which you're not supposed to do, and I'm not recommending that legally, you can then continue to climb down the ladder.
Yeah.
I love knowing what the next question is going to be, and before we get there, I would love to say this question has been everything I hoped it would be.
Yeah, this is going to be a nightmare. Go for it.
Oh, you want me to read it?
Yeah,
Sure,
read it,
why
Mike.
not?
Read it, Mike. I'll
Seem
get
excited.
I'll get the pieces of terrain.
Can you perform?
Let me move.
Can you perform a jump if you're moving off of terrain that your base is not placed on, e.g., jumping while climbing up a ladder or wall? So, can you jump from a ladder?
Survey says the jumping, an operative can jump from terrain when they move off of it. You can move them up to 4 inches horizontally from the edge when they jump. Done like any other move except in one straight line increment. The operative must then drop or climb from there. When jumping to a terrain feature, you can ignore its height difference of 1 inch or less, including its rampart, if any. However, when jumping from a terrain feature, if it has a rampart, you must climb it first.
Before we get too much in the weeds on that, if I can give my personal interpretation, since it specifies you have to jump off of and jump from terrain, like off of, if your base isn't placed on that terrain, you cannot perform a jump move. Therefore, if you're just holding onto the side of a building or holding onto the side of a ladder, you are not able to jump off of it. So no, that would be my interpretation, especially because if you can jump from ladders and walls, it kind of breaks a lot of the game.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. Now, here's some cool things about this specific rule. I agree that you cannot jump off of a piece of terrain if you're not on it, right? Some people might say, like, this is the reason why the question exists in the first place. Can you start climbing this and then jump off of the heavy barricade over the Space Marine to the other side, right? Like 4 inches away, right? Like that is kind of the absurdity that we're going to get to in Kill Team. And maybe that's fun, maybe that's cool, but it kind of sucks for rules figuring things out. There are some interesting things though. For instance, when Volkus has the little boxes and stuff like that, right? They're about a ½ inch tall. So if you're ignoring an inch tall worth of terrain so you can get on top of these insignificant vantages and then possibly jump out, maybe not this specific piece of terrain, but other pieces like the big Volkus board, you can jump out because you're now within an inch of most pieces of that piece of terrain. If that vantage is placed correctly, right? But I'm 100% in agreement with Mike here that you cannot jump off of barricades, Steven Seagal style, from under siege.
Does he jump? Okay.
I don't know if Steven Seagal jumps. I know he breaks a lot of dudes' arms, though. Man, I like Steven Seagal.
Oh, man. I like
so
where
cool.
he's lazily pointing a pistol while looking at something
Dude,
in one
he
of the
is
movies.
like the definition of my guardsman in Kill Team. You know?
He has.
Crouching,
Have you seen?
hidden badges.
Have you seen his fight scenes now? He doesn't even stand up.
He doesn't even
he has fight scene.
That's how cool he is.
They hire the new young guy to do it.
Yeah, dude. He's just sitting in a chair, just breaking people's arms, taking out people's throats. You know.
It's so ridiculous.
I love
It's
it.
so
I love it.
dumb.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like you can't say it's not. You know. Like,
I'm not gonna
this
say I'm
dude's-
not having a good time.
This guy's
watching
so
it, you know?
cool. He can kill people from sitting down. Bad ass.
The end. The ending
so
of those
badass,
movies are always
doesn't
so
get off his
funny.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. It's true. Even Chuck Norris has to get up while kicking people. You know, I've seen Steven Seagal kick people while sitting down, break their kneecaps. It's crazy.
I mean, in his prime, absolutely. Nowadays, stay.
Yeah, now it's even cooler. I'm just saying. That's a hot take for you.
I don't know if Steven Seagal would want Striking Scorpions to have 3+. He seems like a 4+ kind of guy to me.
He does. Absolutely.
Just clouding on Dakota now.
Yeah. Heaven forbid you you get on a ladder and then you jump off the ladder. Like we're getting into some crazy territory,
Yeah,
right?
I like the idea of you lean the ladder up
Like this?
against the barricade, so now
On
you
the
can
heavy
climb
barricade?
up the ladder and jump.
Is that 2 inches taller? Can they do that?
I'm pretty
it's
sure
two-
the heavy barricade's 2 inches tall.
You have the measurement right there. If it's 2 inches, it's just
That
under.
piece is 2 inches, isn't it?
No, it's just under.
Oh,
You can't put the
nice.
barricade
Good
there.
job, game
There
designers.
you go. There you go.
And model designers. You figured stuff out.
I like to think this part would be considered insignificant, like when they pointed out on
But
other
if you
terrain.
had a little piece of vantage, you could jump off of that. No, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, so survey says no.
Survey
You
says
have
no.
to be able to move off of something. In other words, you have to be placed there.
And I think this
off
next
from.
question is also very similar to our last question, which is performing a jump test off of a terrain feature. Can you ignore terrain or models underneath you? I think you can jump up an inch, right? So unfortunately, I think that you can. Like from the little small ones and all that kind of stuff, because you can jump essentially up an inch. So you can jump 3/4 of, you can jump 1.5 inches in the air, which would then clear people's bases, and then you could drop from like the little ½ inch vantages. I know it says terrain,
I feel like
but why can't you somersault with your Striking Scorpion or your Space Marine over the top of a Cults member or a Tau Pathfinder member to stab them in the back? You know?
See, I totally get that. I feel like would have been
rip
easier
out his
is
spine like
if
Predator.
they just were like jump can only be done from vantages only to get lower. You know, I feel like if that was is that the ruling? Let me see jump.
No, it says
So you
that
can,
you can jump.
You can jump to climb.
You can jump to climb too.
Jump to climb.
This is what.
Yeah.
Okay, you can jump to climb.
Yeah.
You can jump to climb?
Yeah.
What's happening?
You can move them to 4 inch horizontally.
You can jump. You can do the King Leonidas thing where you're climbing up the mountain and then you jump to the other peak.
What the
Hell yeah.
hell?
I'm down with that.
Yeah, the operative must then drop or climb. Oh, hey, this kind of changes some stuff. No, never mind. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so you could be in one of the little barricades back
Right,
here
and just totally
and then
jump
jump
up
over
to
here
here.
and then jump up.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. And you can ignore
its
an
height
inch,
difference
so
of
does
1
that
inch
mean
or
it only
less.
costs 2 inches to climb?
So if this was,
If you're
let's
already
say,
a half inch tall,
if this
so then
was,
you jump up an inch, that's an inch and a half?
yeah, if this was like an inch in
No, that's
between,
still...
you would just jump this like it's nothing. Right? Because that's what it's saying here. You can ignore its height distance of 1 inch or less. So if you're, within
If
an
you're
inch
at
here.
2 inches, then you can jump up to the 3rd inch for free.
Wow, incredible.
Incredible. Fantastic. Cool.
However, if you're...
Do you guys disagree?
I don't disagree with what you said, but there is one thing that really sticks out to me that is something that I haven't added to the spreadsheet yet because I hate it. I really, really hate it. If we look at page 46 of the core rule.
46. Okay. All right.
So, Dakota, you have mentioned a few times now you just need to ignore models' bases, right? Because that is what we used to do in 2nd edition. That if you just stayed out of 1 inch of their base, meaning that
1
models
inch
don't really have
control range.
Right. But I mean, like, we only cared about a model's base before, right? We didn't care about the model itself. We didn't, whenever we saw operative, we only cared about
you
their base.
can't move through a model, can you?
Apparently, yeah. So if we look at key principal bases, it says all operatives are on bases. The base is an important part of the miniature for rules purposes. And if we're going to skip ahead a little bit, it says friendly operatives can move through other friendly operatives, in parentheses, the base and the miniature, but not through enemy operatives. Bases cannot move through terrain or other edge of the kill zone. So because when it calls out friendly operatives moving through them, it does call out a base and a miniature, but then when it references moving through enemy operatives, that would lead me to believe that you can no longer ignore the miniature along with the base, which that's horrible. Really don't like that.
Yeah, so if you've got long tentacle arms.
Yeah, I don't think you can jump over miniatures. I don't think you can jump over evil miniatures. You've convinced me, Mike.
If they got the big old thing going up to the sky.
Yeah, as long as you have enough. If you can ignore up to 1 inch. As long as you get that vertical movement, you can jump over.
Yeah, but I do.
But they can't block you if they're tall enough.
Yeah, I think if you're on the little tiny vantages and you're trying to jump over somebody, but obviously if you're on a tall vantage and you jump off of something, you can pretty much clear anything in the game.
But this is more than just jumping, right? So if you have a model that's pointing out his gun, like let's think of Hand of the Archon. He has that model with that giant whip. If his giant whip happens to be going across a hatchway, you're not allowed to move through that because you can't move through his model. I hate that rule.
I bet we're gonna get the thing like Star Wars Legion where you get a silhouette.
I doubt that. They
just give you a silhouette
that's
like this is
the
recommended size to move through them. Because otherwise you're gonna have wonky like arm builds and stuff.
Or you can take your Soul Reaper cannon and string them across.
I'm just like, yeah, there it is.
And now you can't move it through the door. You have to kill the operative first.
Right.
I mean, rules is written. That is how it works. You can't move through enemy models. But I would say personally that I do believe that only accounts for the bases because then people can just model like Batman flying off something, and then you can't get around.
Yeah, what about
that
those guys with
ridiculous.
giant wings already?
For me, I think if your base can fit through, you can fit through. For jumping purposes, I think like even for the striking scorpion with a big old biting blade, right? If anyone can actually see how big that is, less than 3 inches, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I want silhouette so bad, Giacomo. You have no idea.
To answer your question, Mike, I think you can move through models because models are allowed to rotate for free, in my opinion, just like they could last edition. So I think
last edition it was confirmed that a model could only rotate during a movement action. It wasn't for free during a movement action.
Yes.
We haven't even finished the
I am.
We're not even done
I'm
with the
gonna
second
get-
page
I'm gonna
yet.
get frustrated. We're on the second page.
I know, we're not even done with the second page.
Dakota's already getting frustrated.
destroying
I'm sure other people might be getting frustrated too. They're just like
They're waiting to hear-
screaming
they're
at
waiting
their
to hear
phones,
their question,
typing heretical messages to us on YouTube. Wow, I can't believe you guys think this. And according to rule page 22, here you go. Here's the thing: if you guys know the answer, make sure you give us your opinion down below. So that all of us can learn,
Yeah.
I don't know. What's the next question? What's up next? Who's taking the next one?
I'll read it. How does Seek interact with abilities that say an operative... Did we miss one? Oh, we
we
just skip one?
skipped it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Seek is going to be
my
a
bad,
fun
my
answer.
bad. We'll get to the seek one later. Can you benefit from being in cover and obscurity if it's from the same piece of terrain?
Yes.
How about different pieces of terrain?
Yes.
If so, how are the two effects resolved? Very simple. You want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of higher level players are currently doing this, where you can take your model. Goodness gracious, he's metal. You can take your model, okay? You can be within 1 inch of this piece of wall, right? But you're greater than 1 inch from the other side of the wall. So you control this piece of terrain feature. You can shoot through that piece of terrain feature. And anyone shooting you, you are considered still in cover, as long as the closest line, the 1 millimeter line of visibility, still being able to be drawn, yada, yada, yada. You're still considered in cover, and you're further than 1 inch from the furthest edge, which is described in the book. That means you're also obscured. Currently, I think that is how the rules are written. There's no way for us to say that it's changed, unless if you change obscuring back to 2 inches to get rid of that control range. But then you have the dead zone of in between that you can't get cover and you're going to get shot, right? Which who knows if Games Workshop enjoyed that, or maybe that's why they made everything into a 1 inch thing. Or maybe the ruling is that you're only going to be able to take cover or gain obscuring. You can't do both, right? So, or they're just going to ignore the question because the answer is yes, right?
Yep.
Currently, the answer is yes.
I mean,
and I think that is a pretty definitive raw ruling.
It sounds like a yes.
What do you guys think, Jonathan and Mike?
I think it's yes. The idea is that your operative is such a hard shot at this point that they really, really have to do what they can to take the shot. And I mean, if you've got like the ability to ignore obscuring or saturate, you're in the clear. But otherwise, then yeah, you're that operative is super protective, and it is a risky shot.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I personally agree. I will say the only thing that makes it contentious is there are some people that believe that in the example pictures in the rulebook, it does indicate that you could only choose one or the other. So I would be very interested to see if GW officially addresses this. But I am in agreement with the both of you. Or all three of you, rather.
Currently, I think that's how it works, right? So
yeah, because the example that they're giving are specifically that's on page 53. It's just clarifying when obscuring is happening. It's not referring to cover or anything else. So that's why it doesn't state that. The very final picture of that page shows two operatives both within control range of the same piece of heavy terrain, but that heavy terrain is so long between the two of them that it creates that obscuring advantage between them.
Yep, pretty much. Page 53, you got it.
Yeah, and obviously what is also not denoted here, those operatives would have to be engaged. The targeting operative would have to be, the one being shot at would have to be engaged.
Yep.
If they are concealed, then that would trump all of that. But that's not referenced in the photo.
correct.
Yep.
So next question is, how does Seek interact with abilities that say the operative cannot be selected as a valid target? Does being within 2 inches of the operative with the ability affect selecting the target as a valid target? Now, there's two things here. Firstly, I believe rules as written currently, Seek, you cannot get around Super Conceal. Super Conceal specifically says they are not allowed to be considered a valid target, so the first sentence would never apply for Seek because there never were a valid target, so you could never shoot them. I think Games Workshop, rules as intended, is going to take away Super Conceal with Seek. So we are going to be playing it in the more varied version, and that is Seek does take away Super Conceal, and so does getting within 2 inches of models. We've had long discussions, me and Mike. I was a very big proponent of, this is raw. Raw says you cannot shoot these models. And he was like trying to tell me stuff. I was like, shut up, Mike! Shut up!
It's true.
You're wrong. It's true.
That is how it happened. That is exactly how it happened.
I was like, no, you're just wrong.
I am on Dakota's side of this now, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so from my side, the pushing up the old glasses there, Seek is a great rule. It's a fine rule. It's a wonderful rule. But it comes with the rule book, which, per the laws of precedence, has the worst statutory authority, and since the other ones that have super conceal is on a data card that is outside of the rules
on page 55.
that
the
isn't
data card.
The data card actually trumps the core rulebook.
You're wrong, Jonathan. It says it says that the models cannot be selected because you're also looking at super conceal that also trumps the core rulebook.
That's what I'm saying. No,
right?
That is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Since if that super conceal was part of the weapons rules, then that would get into a really weird thing, and I'd hope they'd rephrase it. But super conceal is not listed in weapons or operative rules in the core rulebook. It's outside of it, so that's why it has the I'm better than you because I'm not printed in the rules.
Because currently the way it plays is that if somebody has super conceal, it's literally impossible to shoot them unless if you have a clear line of sight shot on them.
Right.
And I don't think that the game has intended there to be a way for models to just never get shot. Even if you're within 2 inches, unless if you have a clear line of sight on them, right? Like the old domino field or whatever. Specifically, I think that this is going to become the new indirect type thing. And I think that's what it was always intended to be. So I'm going against rules as written and going with rules as intended, or at least how I believe they're going to be intended. And if I was just going raw for SoCal Open, we would do something else. But we're gonna figure it out. Hopefully, Games Workshop can answer these questions.
Because I'm writing this down, I'm going to be putting this will be a RAI ruling, and you will be allowed to use Seek to target a valid. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, there is no more super conceal. They did away with it.
I know.
Seek gets rid of it. There you go.
And
I have my own feelings with Seek and Seek Light. So, but anyways, that's not the question at hand.
For the sake of ease, and as mentioned, super conceal is gone. It's technically 2 different wordings. Like for example, the Commando Sneaky Zogger is worded slightly different than the Scouts version. So you want me to put the same answer for both of them?
Yeah, I'd do the same answer for both.
Cool.
And also the glitchling little guys have their own kind of super conceal.
Dude, they have their own crazy super conceal. They can be on engage and just
still
never
be
get shot.
exactly.
It's insane. It's absolutely
They are in
insane.
the battlefield with a cardboard sword.
They might as well not exist, right?
This is where you get your Seek and start popping them.
Well, not a lot of people have Seek anymore.
Yeah, you're right. I'm spoiled playing Space Marines.
Yeah.
And we are in agreement that if you're within 2 for both the Commando and the Scout one, you can target them, correct?
Correct. And again, rules as written, I personally argue currently Seek and being within 2 does not work. I'm going to make that clear. It does not work. But we're going to play it as though it does in our upcoming tournament because it's just a bad rule. It's just bad.
They're going to have to fix it.
Yeah. It's way too oppressive.
I agree.
Yeah, you can give a caveat like per rules, no, but rules as intended ruling, we're saying you can.
So the next question up is, since visibility requires an unobstructed 1 millimeter line to be drawn from the model's head to a target, must it be a 1 millimeter of the target be visible? I would say yes. I think that if you have a tiny little piece of a gun poking out or a tiny little piece of cape, you can't get it. Unless if it's 1 millimeter of something that can be seen, like the actual tip of the gun, not just like, because there's a lot of feels bads in Kill Team. I can see them.
You need to bring out your Army Painter protractor to make sure it's
exactly.
visibility.
Yeah.
That's going to be contentious. People
but
are
I
going to
do-
be like, I'm not within 1 millimeter.
Yeah, I do agree that it has to be within reason,
I think that the only within reason, because you would have to pull out that Army Painter protractor, I think that you just say, look, if you can see any part of it, you got the shot. You just has to have the unobstructed
1 millimeter is so small.
I
know.
I just made like these
It's like the size of those red sticks.
Yeah,
it's like nothing.
It's like the side of one of these, less than one of these little ladder rungs.
Yeah.
Less than that.
Yeah, like it's gonna be contentious.
Of a meter.
I mean, just think like on a vet guard base to go to, if you're very familiar with, there's 25 of them on that. You know what I mean? Like,
you're right.
Ugh.
And
there's
only one of them
25.
needs to be seen to get shot.
Yeah, only one.
That's a problem. I mean, if you could see it, shoot it. I think that's how that should be done.
So yes, see it, shoot it, or 1 millimeter minimum. Which one?
I think that it's yes if you see it, shoot it, but I will have a caveat that it has to be within reason. Like if there's only the speck of something, I'll say no.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think don't be an asshole.
Yeah,
don't
I think
be
that
an
works,
asshole.
right? Don't be rude to your opponent. That's
Yeah,
it.
just don't be an
Don't get
asshole. Like
super
if you're
sweaty.
like, oh, I can see, let me get
This
my
quarter
magnifying
or
glass
something.
out.
This
like
millionth.
yeah, like don't let the sweat get to you guys, right?
Yeah.
We're all sweating
It burns
enough.
your eyes.
Yeah, it burns. You get too much sweat in there,
Ugh. Oy
Jonathan,
vey.
you want to take this next one?
Do I have to?
Yes.
You don't have to.
I said yes.
Oh, yeah, you have to now.
Fine.
Giacomo
Yeah,
overruled
okay,
me.
Here. You want to talk sweat?
Yeah.
Drawing visibility from an operative. Are you limited to choosing from a spot clearly identified as part of their head, or are you allowed to choose from things attached to the head? Horns, for example.
Where are the eyes? You don't see from your horns. You see from your eyes.
Sure, I have earrings that go on for days.
I mean, this is a question. We get these in Discords. People ask these things. Look at Command Point. Look in their little rules chat. It's crazy. People go crazy in there.
I know.
So
You should have seen last edition.
I never
man.
wanted to be in there because of it.
People go ham.
They go too ham, man.
Eyes on the end of those horns because Sneech is like, I want to be crazy today.
What if somebody models eyes on the end of horns? I don't know.
Hold on. I will say, technically, most models don't even have eyes. Like if they're helmets, right? And I will say, devil's advocate, the name of the people who submit these questions will remain anonymous for their own sake.
Yes.
I will say, Dakota and I both know this person very well, and the question came up fairly that if you're playing, Warp Coven, for example, sorcerers have giant horns on the top of their head. They go on for days. Can you draw something from that? And the example that they use, which is a fair comparison, is currently most people do agree that good old Pathfinders have those really pointy helmets. And most people will allow you. Yep, they will allow you to draw visibility from any part of that pointy helmet. So why can't sorcerers do the same thing with their horns? And it's a fair point.
It is a fair point. It is a fair point. I will say there is a helmet proper, right?
Yes. Right.
Like where could
Where the
model's
eyes
actually
would
get?
be.
Now you could say, the Tzeentch guy can fly, so he could obviously get to the top of his horns. That is his helmet thing, or maybe the bloodletter can actually see outside of its horn, even though they all got retconned to death. Personally, I think that if it's outside of the head itself, you cannot see, right? That's just like a plain and simple answer. I could see other TOs ruling this differently, though. Like, technically, like, anything attached to the head is still the head of a model. Like, when a Games Workshop is showing you how to put together a model,
That's the head.
that is the head,
Right?
right? It is.
It falls into the same thing. Don't be an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah. What about the people that don't even have heads attached to their models? You know what I mean?
Where would the head be?
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do a diagram on a piece of paper.
Okay,
head
yeah,
proper,
well,
not head proper.
There's an Eldar guy right here.
Let's see. Can you get that? Let's try to.
Probably
pull it
not.
up.
Yeah, striking scorpions. Yeah, what's
Here's my little striking scorpion guy, right? He's really tiny. Okay. His head is right there.
Yep.
Right there.
And then he has on top of it,
He has some braids.
which then technically you could be like from the braids,
Yeah, from the braids.
but from the head proper, it's under the braids.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. I mean,
So then-
you just do your best. Do your best, everyone.
your
right?
best.
It's hard to get down to this level, anyways.
Right. We're always gonna kind of slightly look over it. You know.
It's difficult.
What if you have more than one head, like Thrice Curse?
Pick the
Thrice
main
Curse has
head.
More than one
Pick
head.
the main head.
Does he have more than one?
The guy with the big butcher has heads all up and down his arm.
Pick the main head. You know which one it is. Stop.
Giacomo's gonna break my ladder, guys.
I'm gonna break his
He's
ladder.
gonna break my ladder.
Oh.
Welcome to the hell of rules lawyer.
Yeah, so Matt says the game has no concept of facing, so eyes have nothing to do with it. Sadly, Giacomo.
Those are eyes in there. Use your imagination. We're playing with our toy soldiers.
That's right.
I want to commit war crimes properly when I shoot the medic.
We have triggered Giacomo. We have lost Giacomo.
I'm throwing this again.
So, very quantified, specific ways. We're not willy-nilly about this.
I think try not to be an asshole if it makes sense in the proper context,
Yeah.
do it. Not everyone's playing in a tournament scene or in a tournament aspect, right? So as long as you and your opponent are good with it, go for it.
Right. If they say, you can see.
If you have some contention, you can ask somebody next to you, right? Hey, is this part of the dude's head? The dude can say yes or no.
Yep.
I would say if you wanted to do it, you could just say it's the point at the within a millimeter of the center of the head. Get very fanatic. So the center of the head, and remember, they can see through their own bodies, which is why everybody is probably warring right now because they always see terrible shit every day.
See, they can see through their own person. Yeah, see, they can see through their own bodies, and I can't see through the model. I'm just saying, I can't see through it.
That's true.
Yeah,
they always see themselves. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, the only reason why we can see through our models is because of an old FAQ. Was that one of the ones that was addressed in the new rulebook? And
the new rulebook has not said if you can see through your own models, but it has said that you can see. No, it has not, John. You're wrong. Sorry. Excuse me. You're wrong.
I said what, sir? Sorry. I did not say objection.
Oh, sorry.
2 different words. I have a dictionary.
Sorry. Order. All
I
right.
am an inconvenient rule lawyer.
Can you be a convenient one, please?
No.
So
again, I have a dictionary. It's the first word I described there.
That's fair. So this edition has not said whether or not you can see them through the model. I think that since you can see through your own base, I don't see why you can't see through your own model. You can move through your own models. So I think it's objectively like we can say that we can see through our own models, just like we could last edition. I don't know if that necessarily needs to be answered. I'm sure that it would be nice from Games Workshop to be like, yes, you can see through your own models, just to have it clarified for us. Just so that, when you do fight, so-and-so Pathfinder player that's shooting from the back of his head, like you can be like, oh, well, you can't see through your own gun. But yes, I can. All right. Just to have rules but here's the thing, like in a tournament, 99% of these things aren't going to show up. But we've been scarred. I know, Mike.
Yes.
I know, Mike.
Case to
As
case.
TOs, in your games, when you go to a tournament, you're going to run into one of these rules if you're lucky in the event. Us as TOs, we're like, yo, call up a friend, call up a homie. What's up, homie? What is this? Yeah, you think so? Okay, hey, my guy, This is how it works, Like, sometimes rules just get crazy, or you get brain fog, and, you've been going for so long. Sometimes these rules do clarify, and if your team cheeses some of these rules, sometimes it's nice to have clarifications before an event, right? So that's why we're
making this.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%.
So, Mike, you want to read this next one?
Yeah. So if a model on Vantage is shooting at a concealed operative in light cover and also has the Seek Light rule, does the defender still get to retain an extra dice for cover or upgrade one to a crit?
No, because they can't. I think Seek takes precedence, and Seek is going to remove... Well, firstly, the model that they're shooting at has to be on Engage in order to retain that cover dice. If they're on Conceal, they don't retain the
correct
the cover, right?
But Seek makes them be treated as engaged, correct?
Let's look up Seek.
Seek in the back of the book.
Did I go too far? I did go too, or not far enough. And Seek should be here.
When selecting a valid target, operatives cannot use terrain for cover. So right there, it already answers us in the very first sentence.
Right, and that's if you have Seek. Otherwise, Seek Light is just for light cover.
If the rule is Seek Light, operatives cannot use light terrain for cover. Thus, whilst this can allow such operatives to be targeted, assuming they're visible, it does not remove their cover save, if any. So no, it doesn't flip them to Engage.
Right, they still get to have the cover save.
Yes. But they can't use the terrain for cover for purposes of hiding and conceal and being under.
Yeah, it's specifically like...
Well, they cannot use light terrain for cover, so they would get no cover save.
For cover,
Incorrect.
But it doesn't remove their cover. Like Saturate says removes cover.
Oh,
So
okay,
there's
that's
two
right.
sentences-
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the biggest thing is Seek is specifically referring to the valid target portion.
Mm-hmm.
It is not referring to the cover save portion. That's why it has that extra clause. So if the Seek rule is light, they cannot recover light. Blah blah blah.
Fair.
Whilst this allows an operative to be targeted, assuming they are visible, it does not remove their cover save, if any.
Oh,
So
yeah,
they
it
get to
does say it at the
Mhm,
last
at the bottom
sentence,
one,
it does
yeah.
not remove
So
your
you still
cover
get
save.
it.
Yeah. So they still get to have the cover save.
So if they have engage, then they would still get all their extra cover saves from Vantage? Because they're on Vantage?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like they would.
But,
Wow, I
yeah,
just
the
got
only- I mean,
fucking shown.
it's
a
like
learning
when you're
experience.
using Seek isn't really necessary when you have Vantage, unless obviously the operative has super conceal, and with the rules as intended that you've made earlier, then you could use Seek to get around it, and Vantage would apply.
Yeah, because Vantage already basically has the exact same wording as Seek.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it has different caveats for how they retain cover saves and so forth.
Yeah, so
Seek
again,
does get
if they don't have an engage order, they don't gain then your model doesn't gain the accurate 1 and accurate 2. So you still would have to roll for them, but they would still get the extra saves.
Yeah, unless you have saturate.
Yeah. All right.
So I guess what we're saying here is rule is written. You couldn't target them because, like we said, if you're concealed and in cover. Actually, no.
Only if you have
Only got
super
off the
conceal.
tangent.
Super conceal.
Yes. Super
Yeah,
conceal.
only the super conceal works. But regular conceal with like a sister trying to hide behind it, I'll just pop you.
Yeah.
All day.
So
So
can an
what would you
operative fly? Oh, sorry, go for it.
What would you like that answer to be? What do you want me to type in there?
Shooting a conceal.
The defender would still get the extra cover dice.
Okay.
Yeah, the question
Yeah,
that they're
it doesn't
I
get rid
think
of
what
cover.
they're trying to ask is if the person has conceal, normally they get an additional bonus for being shot at from someone on Vantage, which it doesn't remove their cover save, and the defender can retain it as a critical success or attain an additional cover save. And the catch is I guess simply because of the way it works, Seek is better to use when you're on the same level as the person you're fighting per the rules. Than hitting it with Vantage, unless you're trying to finagle it that you're overriding or you're not using Vantage.
Jonathan, you lost me there. I completely
That's
lost
okay.
you. That's okay.
I will say this question itself might even need to be reworded. I'll take a look at that later, but we can move on to the
But
next
yeah,
one.
I think I see what they're trying to go for.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it is one of those ones that gets really nitpicky. But technically it just gets per everything using Seek on Vantage doesn't override the bonus that Vantage gives to shooting someone on conceal, since it specifically lists that out. So they actually have it. It's more advantageous if you're on conceal and you're behind something, and they're on advantage and they have Seek, it's happy days. If they have Seek and they're on the same level as you, you're like, oh shit, I don't get that extra cover save and or critical success.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the next one. I'm gonna let G take this one away because he is passionate.
I am
about
very
this
passionate
one.
about this one.
I'll read it for you. Though,
You
G,
can read it for me.
So you don't waste your beautiful voice.
There you go.
Just yelling at the camera. Okay. Can an operative fly with a portable barricade? On our last podcast or 2 podcasts ago, when we did our other one, Chris Baki, a major player, said that technically you could. Well, we're going to provide the other side of that argument as to why you cannot, because we both agree that you cannot. And Chris, you're wrong.
Now, what do you guys think? Before we
Oh
can
my
go
gosh,
through this answer.
Giacomo, you just
Well, pushes up classes. Go ahead.
Because I have my whole thing here. I've highlighted the parts I need, so I need the equipment pulled up too.
Oh, you need.
I need the equipment's on this one.
It's on this one.
So
I simply don't think you can.
Okay, and Mr. Jonathan,
So
just yes or no.
technically, yes, as intended, no.
Okay, all right. So now
Giacomo's going.
let's get into this. All right. So we're going to read fly. Fly is a rule that's specifically on things, right? So whenever a friendly Vespid Stingwing operative performs an action in which it moves, it can fly. If it does so, don't move it. Instead, remove from the kill zone and set it up back wholly within a distance equal to its move stats, or 3 inches if it was a dash from its original location. Right? All right, and now we go to the universal
It's like
equipment.
instant transmission, Mike once told me.
Yeah.
There you go. And then we read the portable side. All right, let's go ahead and do this. Move with Barricade, 1 AP. The same as the reposition action, except the active operative can move no more than its move stat -2 and cannot climb, drop, or jump. Before this operative moves, so it's referring to that you're going to move, remove the portable barricade it's connected to. So let's do it as we have this here, right? We have it connected. You're going to move, and now that you're going to use fly, you remove this first before you do fly.
Okay.
And then now you do fly. But you don't move when you fly. You set up somewhere within your range. That's not move, because it specifically says don't, instead do this. Right?
Sets up there.
So now you're there, but this tells you, after it moves, set up the portable barricade so it's connected again. You didn't technically move. So in my eyes, you just killed your portable barricade.
You think it just disappears?
It never can return because it says after you move. You don't move. Reposition and move are not the same.
So some people in chat are saying like, it's too heavy. Oh, you just leave it behind. Giacomo's like, nah, dude. Like I'm gonna Super Mario, Super Smash Bros.
I
glitched
glitched
it
this.
out,
It's
and
out.
it jumps out. So Giacomo's interpretation, which is a whole different interpretation I didn't even think about. He's like, yo, dude, if you try this shit, I'm TOing. I'm just removing the
It's
barricade.
gone.
Screw you. That's different. That's a different one.
Because it says once
I thought this was going to be easy, Giacomo.
right,
It's just going to be a no.
After it moves, set up the portable barricade again. Again, specifically, fly says don't, instead do this. So therefore, you don't move. Right? Am I reading that right?
I mean, I don't think you're necessarily wrong.
I don't think that was how they intended it. I think they probably were like, yeah, you just fly away. You're too heavy to pick that up. I think that's what they probably meant.
But if you start to fly, perhaps doesn't moving it cost a 1 AP?
Move with
so
barricade.
you would have to use your 1 AP to
Right, to
use
do
the
it.
move.
Exactly.
But you're flying.
Right. If you tried to do this, you'd get rid of your barricade. If you just
Or-
flow on your own.
Or fly is a different action, so you can't move with it.
Fly is performs an action in which it moves. So that would be
Okay, so-
reposition, dash, counteracting, dash, charging.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a technicality on it.
Okay, let's get it on.
Let's say your rule. Let's just say that your interpretation is 100% correct, because the Zinch is there saying, okay, this thing does not come back until you move, which means if you fly, okay, and then you suddenly dash and you don't use the fly option, it magically pops back into existence at that point, because it's always waiting for that operative to move.
See, I would almost agree,
you now
but move
have
with
a
barricade is
pocket
its
dimension.
own action.
Yeah,
You have a
And now-
pocket dimension.
Now you're dashing. You're not dashing with barricade. You're moving with barricade, and you've
Oh, no,
completed
no.
the move with barricade, right?
So it's after, like, the clause that you're referring to is the after it moves.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's always watching and waiting for that operative to move, you just have to make that operative move at some point, and then the barricade would complete its action.
So I mean, I can see the other side. Of
I can see the other side.
where
But
when
it's
you
not supposed to work that way.
when you
Right,
move,
you'd
you
be-
instant
you'd
teleport.
be-
It comes.
It would be
and then
waiting for you to move again.
I could see
Yeah.
the other side.
I could see that, but at the same time, move with barricade is a separate action. So the action's never completed with that part, and therefore you can never do this again, because now you no longer have a portable barricade to move away.
Yeah. Let's make this easy, everyone. We're just gonna say no.
Yeah, just keep it no, because this is getting too pocket dimension here.
It's definitely supposed to be.
Because I think you would make your thing disappear and you never get it back, which would be like, why
We're
would
just
you
gonna
do
say
that?
you cannot perform
the
the
fly
move
action
with barricade action with your fly.
With your
action.
fly.
You know what's funny is that these guys have fly, but Tau drones don't. Exciting. Shade. Throwing shade like the shade runner. Against the Pathfinders all day, every day.
right, but
It's the one.
this,
It's
their
the
drone
one
gets it,
team
though.
that we can make fun of without feeling bad. Now here's the thing: it's always in good fun. Some people are like, "Oh, you're still banging away at the
Right.
Pathfinder's drum. Why do you do that?"
That also
it's a
applies
joke.
to the Shadow Runner and the
Yes, it does. The Shadow Runner as well.
The
Our whole-
Votan guy who has the jump pack.
Yeah. So the
any,
reason
any and all ones that replace movement with simply flee
Fly.
and set back wholly.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to move normally. We're saying.
Yes. So I mean, fly is an optional keyword. You
Yes, you
can't.
don't
The
have to fly.
Vespids can. Correct. You
Yeah.
in some instances you literally can't. Like for example, you can't fly through a hatchway. It specifically
Right.
says in the fly keyword you cannot do that. So obviously it's optional, and I don't think you can choose to fly with the barricade. The other slightly different one is if we wanted to look at the Corsairs one, or is that the one you
Shadow
already
Reader?
referred to?
Yeah, the Shadow
Yeah.
Runner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shade Weaver, I believe.
Shade Weaver. There we go. And the
Yeah, 'cause he
Mandrakes
can
also have
blink.
their own thing too. But yeah.
Yeah. I don't think any of them can do it, but yeah.
We're just gonna say
We're just gonna say no.
Yeah,
you
you
have to
can't.
actually use the APL to move with it rather than doing any kind of crazy shenanigans. Stop the shenanigans. Don't be a butthole. Be a nice guy or girl, and just move along. Right.
Everything in between. Yeah. No climbing, no
That was a
dropping,
fun one.
no jumping.
I like that one.
It should just say no climbing, no dropping, no jumping,
No teleport, no fly.
no
Right.
teleport, no fly.
It's
Stop
got to
it.
be a regular move
no
on the
Santa
ground
Claus.
reposition.
Hey, we might be
Yeah,
wrong.
no.
Maybe you can.
Maybe GW wants you to fly.
Maybe
with it.
GW is like, yo, this is a cool part of the game. Why are you guys trying to like FAQ this out of the game?
Yeah, get
you
outta
guys are
here.
dumb.
So I personally have a belief where I don't think a lot of this stuff gets caught in like a lot of playtesting, or they think it's so obvious that they don't even really like hash it out like this right here. And I think that if we point out these kind of things, then it gives them a chance to be like, oh yeah, let's do that. Or I didn't even think about that, but that sounds fun. Let's allow it.
Or they're just like, why are you so stupid, and why
Yes,
are you asking me these questions?
Leave me alone, sir.
This is normal, okay? In the UK, we don't ask these kinds of things. Don't ask me why I did like some.
Yeah,
weird
I don't know what
accent
accent that was.
I'm really good at a Russian accent. I can't do a lot of the other ones, I can do Australian and Russian, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not the British guy. I'm not the British one.
I might.
Yeah, that's Australian.
I know.
You know who's a good at British ones? Jonathan Marquis.
Yeah. Okay.
I can do a few.
Yeah, he can.
A few, he says.
So what's up with the next one?
I kind of like it. This one.
Do you like this question?
A little bit. It was interesting. I thought it was interesting.
That's gonna
Okay.
That's gonna make me upset. Okay. All right, Mike. Which question do you like, my friend?
To receive cover from a portable barricade, an operative must be touching both feet. However, these feet do not provide cover themselves. Are these feet also insignificant for the purposes of movement, or must they be climbed? Similarly, do the feet of the new light barricades provide cover, and do they need to be climbed?
Where's our light barricade piece?
No, they don't need to be climbed, everyone.
No.
I think it's more interesting.
Doesn't it say it?
No, it doesn't. For portable barricade, it doesn't. And light barricade, it definitely doesn't reference the new feet. I think the portable barricade one is interesting, especially because if you are touching both feet, to try to get around it without being forced to climb it, if you are forced to climb it, is a nightmare. I personally think the feet should be insignificant for both the portable barricade and the new light barricade. And the only reason why for the new light barricade is because while I prefer WYSIWYG terrain, I think for the sake of consistency for the second edition barricades, people who want to continue to use them for third edition, that you just make it consistent. Say the new third edition barricades little feet thing are insignificant.
I would agree. I think they're insignificant for not only that, but for also the portable barricades. How else is it going to stand up, everyone?
Right. I think
not going to stand up if you don't have the feet.
In this image, I think it's just made so that you can put your model next to the feet, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like we can.
Are we going to have to climb over the singular
little
skull
thing on the
as well?
heavy ones?
On the heavy one? No. Just ignore the skull.
If we look at the rule for it, it calls out that it doesn't provide cover, but it doesn't go that extra step of saying insignificant. Where if it just said also insignificant,
you are correct.
That would be very nice.
It
should be insignificant. It is.
Yeah.
It'd be weird that your guy couldn't step over it.
I think that people 100%, once they start looking deeper and deeper at the rules, I think this is a question that has to be answered by the developers, and we will rule it as insignificant
for now,
for the purposes of moving over the feet.
Yes.
So one little caveat. I'm going to write on here, all barricade feet are exposed and insignificant. Because the portable barricade explicitly says that. Light barricade doesn't say that the new feet are exposed as well.
Well, maybe we're wrong. What do you think, Jonathan? Do you think we're wrong?
So in my opinion, like when you look at the barricade, the front feet, quote unquote, are actually pretty thick and wide. The back feet are kind of thin and small just to prevent the barricade from falling over.
Yes.
it would make sense that the ones in the back you're not able to hide behind, but you could make a weird argument for the tongs in the front because they are thicker sheets of metal, essentially.
I think that you
just like they
can
were
hide
originally.
behind. I think you can hide behind it. I think that the point of the base, right, is supposed to be. It is supposed to be so that it butts up to the model so that you can't get a weird angled shot behind an angled barricade. I think that they provide cover. The feet do, but I think that they can be moved over as insignificant.
Okay, so
it's exposable,
especially on the portable one. The portable one,
the,
you can't even put a base up into it. You know what I mean?
Right. It forces you to stop.
It's stated in a thing.
Yeah, the portable one explicitly says that that's basically exposed. The feet there.
You must touch the feet.
Oh yeah, you have to touch the feet, right?
Yes.
Well, it's in addition to touching the feet, they themselves are exposed, which means if you inch past it just a little bit and you draw a cover line that would cross those feet, they don't help you.
Does it really? Oh my goodness, golly.
Yes.
Okay, well that is a nifty little trick.
Because it is a barricade that is basically just
Yep,
a door.
ignore-
If I get a
ignore
little
its
bit
feet.
beyond the door, that
So what we're
doorknob
saying is
isn't
now
helping.
we have to climb it. We have to climb it like.
That's the question, yes. But I think that it should just be exposed and insignificant.
Yeah,
Good to go.
So now we have to do this.
In order to, I mean, in the diagram they show you could do this.
I
if
know,
the diagram says it.
But they just said if you cross it and you can shoot it because it's not touching the barricade. So let's just touch the barricade so they can't do it.
I suppose. I mean, I think again this is an example of they're gonna get it, but really no.
Games Workshop, just answer our questions. Just answer them.
It's not that they don't get it. It's that some people get it and go, but can I abuse it?
Yeah,
Yes,
Games
yes,
Workshop is
yes.
more
That's the
frustrated than
problem.
we are. Just
Right.
so you know.
Yeah.
All right.
100%.
All right,
Moving
Mike.
on?
Whatever you write, I'm down with. We're just gonna go.
Fine.
We're just.
all barricade feet, all tiny added.
If Mike just wrote in there, it's all considered heavy terrain. I'd be like, all right, well,
I
whatever.
bet it's
We're-
heavy now.
We're good.
But
I
it's the
don't-
best piece of terrain in the game. It moves with you,
Don't even want to go through it.
and it gives you +1 to your save. Incredible.
Yeah. So the
What
next.
is the next one.
Yeah, the
Yes.
accessible keyword states that operatives can move through accessible terrain as long as the center of their base. Oh, is this that one, Mike?
I hate this.
Through the center of their base moves through the accessible terrain. What does it mean in regards to trying to block enemy operatives from movement through a door with your base? Example, if an enemy is in a hatchway, it can fit an operative's base between them and the ITD wall, moving through the accessible hatchway. And can I charge around it?
You did skip
We
one.
skipped
but
one.
I did?
We
Okay.
did.
We'll get back to
We
it.
can get to the painful one in just a moment. So the one we have right now is: can an operative open a hatchway from a position where they cannot legally be placed, i.e., since the operative can now move through friendly models, if the hatchway is being blocked by friendly model bases, can they still open the hatchway during your reposition action?
Well,
I don't know.
let's find out.
What does the door
I mean-
action say here? Hatchway fight, condensed environments, beta decima. No one wants to.
They're
read
operate
them. Operate hatch. Operate hatch. Open a door. Open or close a hatchway that's access point is within this operative's control range. An operative can perform this action during a dash or reposition action. Any remaining move distance can be used after it does so. Now here's the thing. We came to the same thing with an earlier question stating that a model that can move through something as long as they legally can be placed at the end is allowed to move there, right? Even with the singular inches. I think this is going to take the same precedence
Totally.
that you can move through your own models, open the door, and continue your move as long as your move ends in a legal place with your reposition action. You can't link them together. You can't move, reposition. I'm not in a legal place at the end of my activation to open this, and I have 3 APL, so I'm going to dash to finish it. No, you have to finish your action, and as long as you have the movement to do so, you're Gucci.
If
And
I may,
Go ahead.
I talked about this one with some people and like at length with Travis. It is my opinion that rules as written, you can do it, but I think it should be for the sake of just clean rules. Rules as intended, you cannot. And the reason why is I'll just pose one question to you guys. Let's say I'm moving through my friendly operative to open up this door, which we all agree that we can do. Once I open that door, if I'm now in engagement range of an enemy on the other side of that door, or if they're taking a shot on me because they're on like guard or something, what happens then? Like, can a model legally take cover behind something that they're not actually placed behind? So where do you do the cover lines? How do you do the fight? Like, it becomes super messy if we allow this.
I mean,
Well,
you're not wrong.
here's the two things. One, so I don't forget it. The comparison to this would be jump, where jump specifically states you have to move from something, so the operative has to be placed there. This one is moving through. If there's a caveat in movement where if you would be ending a move and where operative cannot be placed, you just undo it. So if you opening that hatch would put your operative and leave your operative in a position where they cannot open it, just as the as Dakota was pointing out earlier, where you try to dash and then open the door, but that would still leave you with all your guys.
Then you couldn't open it.
Your base
Right.
can't be placed. You can't open that door. So
Correct.
if opening that door would leave your guy on top of your own models because there's an operative on the other side, you can't complete that movement. Same thing as if you tried to move through that door, but you don't have enough space for your model and your opponent's model when you're charging, you cannot complete that action.
And technically, you can
agree with
open it.
that.
You can open it within an inch, and then like you can be within an inch of a hatchway, but not within control range. So you have that extra quarter inch of movement, so you can move, open it, and then move out as long as you're not
You
in
can do
you
that.
know in control range.
Yeah.
Yes and no, but again, that comes back to for one thing, if the person's on guard, they can hatchway fight you because now you're within 2 inches of them, and so it gets around that. And then also,
You are
without
right.
having to stop or anything, the example of the shooting, how do you really deal with that? We're now specifically with cover, right? So are they allowed to take cover from like where their friendly model is, because that's where you're saying they are when they
I
open the
don't
door?
think friendly models offer cover anymore.
No, they don't.
In
They don't.
close
I'm saying
environments.
they don't. I'm saying if you're opening the door where your friendly model is, because that's where your path is taking you, then are you able to take cover at that moment then, because that's where you're opening the door from? It becomes very messy very quick if we drill down into it.
I think the hatchway fight is the biggest thing that
Right,
that
because-
dissuades me from this argument. On guard, hatchway fighting, and then your model gets to continue its action. Because how does a guard?
Guard
you
is you interrupt, so that's halfway while the action is still
But
taking
isn't
place.
it after an enemy operative
after
performs
It's
an
after you
action?
open
Right.
after you
Right.
open the door, though, because you're not
Correct.
interrupting the
You're
move,
correct.
you're
You're
interrupting
The door is
oh,
where
okay.
is where the action happens, and that's the
Yeah.
problem.
And so what? And then the operative gets to continue its movement. But then if it's injured and then it can no longer move, then it never could have opened the door in the first place because it's on top of a
Yeah.
model.
Right.
I think
Very
specifically because of that interaction, that specific interaction, we have to say no.
Right.
That specific interaction,
Or we have to say you have to legally be placed somewhere
to open
while
the door.
while you're getting guarded. Yeah, legally placed while you're opening a door. I think that works.
While you're opening, I think
Yeah.
that rules as written. I think you are correct that technically you can, but specifically because of a specific interaction in the game that requires your model to be placed. If we allow that to happen, you could essentially somehow get around guard or make it even worse or force a model to end on top of a model, rules as written, and I don't think that that's
Right.
possible.
So you need to be able to open the door legally as if
Because
this wasn't going to happen.
the only thing that allows you to move a model currently in the game outside of its activation is, from what I can think of off the top of my head, is opening a hatchway and forcing a model to not be under blocking terrain
Right.
or behind the door anymore.
So I put here, let me know if you agree with it, and then if you do, we can move on. While opening a hatchway, you need to be in a position that you can legally be placed. This is specifically to avoid some messy rules interactions.
Perfect.
Yep, I'm fine with it.
So the next one, I think I've already read this, but I'll read it again. The accessible keyword states that operatives can move through accessible terrain as the center of their base moves through the accessible terrain. What does this mean in regards to trying to block an enemy operative's movement through a door with your base? Example, if an enemy operative is in a hatchway, but it can only fit half the enemy's base between them and the IT2 wall, while moving through the accessible hatchway, can you charge around them? I think I've said this a couple times. I am against this rules interaction. I think that you get into messy situations if you allow your base to be shrunk down and then moved through stuff. I am generally against this. What do you guys think?
When you say against this, unfortunately, just due to the vaguitude
I think that your models can block other models
Yeah.
from moving through. And if you cannot move
Absolutely.
your model through shrinking down, you can hatchway fight, and that's always allowed because it is actually legal. But then you're asking like, hey, I'm going to shrink my model down to what, a 15 millimeter size? We don't have that rule. We don't have that size of a thing. I'm going to shrink my 32 to a 16. I'm going to shrink my 25 to a 12.
Right.
You know, like what is that? What does that even measurement mean? I'm sure people in the UK could tell me, but I don't know. I use freedom units.
We're
you know?
dumb Americans.
Yeah, we're
Hell
Americans.
yeah, freedom.
Yeah. You know? So like I think shrinking down and moving just creates more messy rules interaction. While I think that it is rules as written, I don't think that there's a necessarily easy way to put that unless if you can easily show on, let's say, this Volcus piece of terrain, right? If you're just on this side of the hatchway, I think that your model could then come through this side of the hatchway to start a fight.
Like if you charge, because now you can end in their control range.
Yeah. But I think the second that you start just edging onto the door itself, it makes it near impossible to actually measure a base and get through.
Right.
Go ahead, Mike. I know that you feel opposite on this.
I do, but also I want to clarify a couple points in case like Twitch users are out there going, but we are not saying that you can't just fight them on the other side with the new door fight rule. That you could just have a model on one side of the door and then move up to touch that door and now fight them through the door. But essentially, hatchway fight is everywhere now. We all understand that. This is more about if you want to charge through and get on the objective that's behind the person on the other side of the door, if you're allowed to do that. And as far as shrinking the base goes, that's like a misnomer. I want to clarify that my stance is you basically just cut the base in half. You pretend half of the base doesn't exist. And if that remaining half can fit between the accessible doorway without going through any enemy model base on the other side, then I think you're good to go to do it.
So
what is the page that has the ruling on it?
61.
So there's two things. Last Worlds, there was a really weird rules interaction that makes more sense now.
Okay.
Right? So this happened to Jason Steinke, right? He was blocking a hatchway, and the TO let a different model charge his model, get around the other side of him, because he said that his model could move through the door, instantly teleport to the side because of his base size, and then move around his model and charge him from behind. I was like, I don't know where this is happening, you know, whether Jason related differently to me or then what it happened, or I don't know what TO told him that at Worlds, but that's defunctly not how the game worked last edition.
Right.
Perhaps that TO or person was getting these rules mixed up with the last edition rules. Maybe this is allowing that and letting people move around things, shrinking their bases, getting around walls and stuff like that. I think the game is way cleaner if we don't allow that to happen.
So
This
is my interpretation. I'm going to first read accessible. Accessible is a highlighted door. It's a defined section of terrain. Operators can move through accessible terrain. This takes precedence over bases on page 46 and terrain and movement on page 56, but also counts as an additional 1 inch to do so. Only the center of an operative's base needs to move through
an accessible
terrain, so its base size is irrelevant. So to point it out, so we're saying the center of the base, which is basically a null point.
Yeah, correct.
Now here's, just bear with me. The accessible terrain is basically defined as that door, which is essentially like 2 millimeters wide or a millimeter wide, 20 to whatever millimeters it is. You can go through that, but the moment you cross that line, you are no longer in the special zone of being accessible, and you are now facing normal rules. So if you cannot be placed on the other side of it for whatever reason, you are no longer a single null point. So you can't use that to shimmy around an operative that's on the other side, because you are now immediately normal. You are only a single point during that 1 to 2 millimeter crossing.
Correct.
Yes.
And this also affects climbing when you place a barricade on the opposite side of a door. You have to see it to be able to climb, so on and so forth. Continue.
What you were describing, I agree with, but the only thing I would like to to have you picture in your mind is, let's say, if you have a balloon, right, and you have a 1-inch diameter hole. If you're pushing that balloon, it shrinks during the 1 inch and then expands on the other side of it, right? And that's essentially what I think is happening with these accessible rules. When you're going through, so when you're going through that door, your base is shrinking down to the halfway point. So it's not like, your balloon isn't taking up the entire diameter. It's just halfway of that hole, and then it expands on the other side. But as you're going through, it shrinks, it compresses for that moment. If you're able to do that without bumping into the other enemy base on the other side, then I think you're good to go.
As long as your unit can be placed on the other side, you are good to go. But you cannot be placed in control range unless you are Harlequins or you're charging. And Harlequins would still need to move around.
So I think I disagree with all three of you now. I would say 100% you just can't do it. Once again, I think this definitely needs an FAQ. Because there's way too much mess to allow this to happen, to have people be like, oh, I'm just in control range now, so I'm just going to move the singular point through the other side of the door, start expanding on the other side, and then as long as my base can fit, then I'm going to continue to charge around. Firstly, I think it's way, way gamey. Secondly, I think that, and I'm not saying gamey in a bad way, I think that I can see really big feels bads for it. I can see so many different problems with this interpretation of the rule. It'd be just better if somebody had to hatchway fight, clear out the other side to get to the other side of the door. But you can also say that that's a problem too, because of all the blocking that you can just stack onto a door. But I mean, it didn't affect us last edition. You could still block a door.
You'd only be able to pop out immediately from the center of that door.
Yes.
So you'd always, as long as an operative is within 1 inch of that door, there's no unit that's that small that would be able to fit there.
Right, because I'm thinking like this: if you can't physically,
because you would always pop out,
and
your model would always fit immediately over top of the other model at that point.
That's not actually true. It's not factually true, and I'll give you a very easy to conceptualize example. Right now we're looking at Vulcans. What we really need to do for this question is to look at Into the Dark. And Into the Dark Hatchway, there is enough bait. I think we've all seen for ourselves that on Into Dark Hatchway
Dark Hatchway is much easier for this interaction to occur. On Vulcans or any type of open terrain, I think it's I don't think it's possible.
Remember that Into the Dark is now much smaller. The access point is much smaller than what it used to be. It's now just the width of the door.
I think it was always just the width of the door.
No, before it
used to be the whole up to the pillars.
Everything up to the pillars.
Yes.
So you could run through those side walls.
Oh, you're right.
You can have in Into the Dark. You can have 2 25mm bases on each side of the axway point, halfway in, and either just barely touch themselves or not touch themselves. And that's the exact principle of this, right? You can have 2 25mm bases on either side of the hatchway wall and not touch each other, and have any room to allow that to happen. Then you could, in this example, move through and charge through, and that's the whole premise of this question.
Mm-hmm. This is a very difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
I think it should only work if you can, let's say you're here, you can actually appear and be able to land now, and then now you can do it, because if you're not able to do this, well, you can't land, therefore you shouldn't be able to move around. Because you'd be on the opponent's base, which is illegal.
No, I see where it is. Because, it's not, and I guess that's on me, because you don't have to leave from the center of the doorway. You are leaving using the center of your base.
So the center line goes through.
So that's the catch. It really should be you leave from the center of the access part. That would handle all of this, because then you'd always be shunted right in the middle of the door.
Right. Yep. Which then a guy's blocking. You're stuck.
And that was on me.
And I will say, just devil's advocate, GW tried to make this clear because it wasn't clear at all before. They tried to make it clear. They got partially there. Now we're trying to help them get the rest of the way there. At least point out the friction points.
This is the caveat where I will. It looks like my phone is going to die.
We got to
put this back on charge. Twitch
That's a hell of a caveat. Your phone's going to die?
It is.
I don't know how to interpret that, sir. But
oh wow, you're at 1%.
Yeah, dude. Good thing I looked over. Jeez.
You underestimated this rules discussion.
I did. I did. Okay. So this is where I'll say I think it's a lot easier if you just say as long as half of your base can fit through the door without intersecting an enemy model, then your base could fit. So for instance, through the hatchway point, since you're going from the center of your base and you're going through the center, like let's say the line here on the hatchway, right? As long as that half of your base can fit through the other side and be placed legally, then you would be able to move through the hatchway and basically effectively ignoring the other 14 millimeters, 12 millimeters, 16 millimeters of your base, right? Because still the center has to pass through, sit down on the other side in a straight line increment and then be placed, right? Mm-hmm. If your model can't do that and a model has put itself there, I would say that you can't. I think on open, it's insanely more difficult to have that happen. But I think that you could ignore half of your base while moving through. And that's specifically the half of your base thing to me makes more sense than saying a singular point in the middle of your base. Like, where is that going to go? You know, you can actually visually judge, okay, this is about half of my base. I can fit through this line, place them down, legal placement, we're good to go. What do you guys think about that? I guess I just said the same thing that you're saying, Mike, but just in a different way. That makes more sense to me.
I think that this is a very complicated topic to try to articulate and let the other person visualize what you're trying to do. I think that the best way to address this is to limit it to what you can and cannot do, right? So like if you're saying if you have a model at the other side of the door, can I still charge around him with X? Yes or no, that type of thing. And then I think
if your base can legally be placed on the other side of the hatchway point, while half of your base is still moving through a hatchway, then yes.
Yes, I agree with that statement, and that could make it a lot easier for people to conceptualize.
Yeah. I think balloons confuse me, Mike. Okay, let's not go down the balloon route. All right.
So I'm just trying to do a magic trick. All right, we're gonna make a dog out of that balloon, and it'll walk through the hatchway. We'll be all good.
Yeah. So
that balloon,
hopefully,
that's Chicago.
Yeah. Hopefully, question 6 is this next question is easy to resolve. In step 6 of the shooting attack, are all attacks dice resolved simultaneously or one at a time? I think it's pretty self-explanatory that they all resolve at once. And then when somebody's using Tough Survivalist or some kind of Undaunted Explorers or Corsair's Warding or something like that,
right?
The player that is using that ability gets to decide which dice they're going to ignore for the damage.
Right.
Unlike, I think, the Warp Coven, even the Warp Coven one, they get to choose like one dice does only one damage to them. Mm-hmm. So all is dust or something like that.
Easy one.
Easy.
Simple.
Hopefully. Unless if Mike and Jonathan want to argue with me.
Well, so you are saying that the defender gets to choose the dice, right?
Defender gets to choose
or the
dice
person with the ability who's using it to manipulate the damage.
Correct.
Yes, I'm on board. I don't know about Jonathan.
Jonathan?
Say yes.
Oh my God. Oh my God, Jonathan.
I'm just kidding.
See here.
Attacker rolls attack dice. Each dice it's a hat save, it is retained. Each one that doesn't is gone away. Each 6s are criticals. Each result of 1 is always a fail. Rules for targeting, and then the next step, we're going on to 5. Yeah, so you have all of yours. 5, the defender allocates all of their successful defenses to block, and then you resolve.
Correct.
Yeah.
Jonathan, just agree with us. Just agree with us, Jonathan.
There's nothing else. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right. Good.
Easy.
Defender chooses.
Defender chooses. There we go. Hello. Welcome to the end of the video. Today is the next morning for me, not for you. This video ended up being 4 hours long, and we did not want to put a 4-hour video up on YouTube, so we ended up breaking it into part 1 and part 2. If you are enjoying this video so far, go check out part 2. There's a lot more rules interactions and interesting things that are happening in Kill Team that we're trying to address so that Games Workshop can see this video as well and respond to everything, including to the packet that we sent them. If you agree with us, you can write it in the comments. If you don't agree with us, you can always write that in the comments as well. We hope that Games Workshop can clear a lot of these things up for us so that they're no longer frequently asked questions. or weird rules interactions. So if you guys want to help support the cause, give us a like, subscribe, and until next time.